First of all, welcome to Streetlit Audiobooks. Got another banger for you. Let me know where you're from and don't forget to like, hype, and subscribe.
I didn't watch day one turn strangers for dollars. Watch the broke
The
man
Circle.
gain power and forget who beside
Midnight
us.
Kings.
Had to learn every smile
Chapter
and
1.
love when they
Kings don't sleep. Harlem never really slept. It only changed shifts. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Lenox Avenue belonged to a different breed of people. The tourists were gone. Storefront gates rattled in the summer breeze. Yellow cabs drifted through red lights like ghosts. Somewhere in the distance, a saxophone echoed from an apartment window while police sirens bounced between brick buildings. Malik, Ghost King, sat inside a black Range Rover parked beneath a flickering streetlight. The engine idled. His hands rested calmly on the steering wheel. He wasn't nervous. Men like Ghost didn't survive because they were fearless. They survived because they never confused confidence with carelessness. A phone buzzed once, one vibration. That was the signal. Ghost glanced into the rearview mirror. A gray Dodge Charger rolled slowly around the corner before stopping half a block away. 2 men remained inside. "They're here," Ghost said quietly. Beside him, Darius, Rel Carter, smiled. "You ever think about how much money gets made while everybody else sleeping?" Ghost looked straight ahead. "I think about how many funerals happen because somebody gets greedy." Rel laughed. "That's why you the brains. And you're still breathing because you listen." Rel grinned, but didn't answer. They had known each other since they were 10 years old. Same neighborhood, same schools, same empty refrigerators, same dreams. Only difference was Ghost learned patience, Rel learned aggression. Together, they had built something the streets respected. Nobody called it a gang. Nobody called it a crew. People simply referred to it as the Circle. No colors, no tattoos, no social media, only loyalty, only business, only silence. Ghost checked his watch. 3 minutes late. He hated late. Late made people nervous. Nervous people made mistakes. A knock echoed against the driver's window. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Ghost unlocked the door. A tall Dominican man stepped inside the SUV. Expensive watch, tailored suit, smile that never reached his eyes. "Evening, gentlemen." Ghost nodded. "Raphael." Raphael Cruz leaned back comfortably. "You always choose interesting places." Ghost shrugged. "I like places where nobody expects business." Raphael laughed. "You New Yorkers always think you're smarter than everyone." Rel interrupted. "Depends who's asking." Raphael ignored him. "The shipment crossed into Jersey an hour ago." Ghost stayed expressionless. "No problems?" "None." "The trucks?" "Clean." "The drivers?" "Loyal." Ghost nodded once. "What about Philly?" Raphael's smile disappeared. "They're asking questions." Rel rolled his eyes. "Then stop answering them." Ghost shot him a look. Rel leaned back. Raphael folded his hands. "The people controlling North Philadelphia don't appreciate outsiders making money." Ghost answered calmly. "We're not taking anything. They don't see it that way. They don't have to." Silence filled the SUV. Finally, Raphael slid a small envelope across the center console. Ghost opened it. Inside were photographs, warehouses, license plates, faces. One picture caught his attention. A man wearing a Phillies cap, scar across his left cheek. Ghost frowned. "Who is he?" Raphael answered immediately. "Isaiah Graves." Rel's smile disappeared. "I heard of him." "So have I," Ghost replied. Raphael nodded. "He controls several neighborhoods, former Marine, doesn't scare easily." Rel cracked his knuckles. "Everybody scares." Ghost ignored the comment. "We'll handle Philly when it's time." Raphael reached for the door. "One more thing." Ghost looked up. "Washington." "What about it?" "A councilman's nephew wants in." Rel laughed loudly. "Politics." Ghost didn't laugh. Politics brought headlines. Headlines brought federal agents. Federal agents ruined everything. We don't do politics. Raphael shrugged. They're already doing you. He stepped out and disappeared into the darkness. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Rel finally broke the silence. I don't like him. You don't have to. I think he's hiding something. Ghost started the engine. Everybody's hiding something. Across town. Detective Isaiah Brooks stood inside an unmarked police van watching grainy surveillance footage. 3 monitors, 6 cameras, hundreds of hours of recordings. Coffee cups covered the dashboard. An exhausted detective rubbed his eyes. His partner, Maria Alvarez, tossed another file onto the seat. Still nothing? Brooks shook his head. Enough to know he's dirty. Not enough to prove it. He hasn't been arrested in 12 years. Because he's careful. No. Brooks stared at Ghost's photo pinned to the wall. Because he's smarter than the people chasing him. Maria sighed. You've been chasing this man for 6 years. I'll chase him 6 more. She looked toward the monitor. You really think tonight's the night? Brooks answered without hesitation. Every empire slips. 4 hours later. The circle gathered inside an old boxing gym hidden beneath an abandoned furniture warehouse. Punching bags hung from rusty chains. Weights covered the floor. Music played softly through cracked speakers. Nobody discussed business outside this building, ever. Ghost believed routine kept people alive. Around a folding table sat 12 men. Some from Harlem, some from Brooklyn, one from Newark. Each had earned his seat. Ghost remained standing. He looked around the room. No phones. Everyone emptied their pockets. No names outside this room. Everyone nodded. If anybody has problems at home, silence. Say it now. Nobody spoke. Ghost smiled slightly. Good. He unfolded a city map. New York, Philadelphia, Washington. 3 circles connected by red marker. This isn't expansion. He looked at every face. It's survival. One of the younger members raised his hand. What if Philly refuses? Ghost answered calmly. Then we negotiate. Another asked, and if they don't negotiate? Rel answered before Ghost could. Then we remind them why they should. A few laughed. Ghost didn't. He stared directly at Rel. Violence isn't the first move. Rel shrugged. But sometimes it's the best one. Ghost folded the map. It's always the most expensive one. The room fell quiet. Ghost continued. We built this organization because everybody else acted with emotion. He paused. We don't. Every eye stayed on him. We don't rob families. We don't sell to children. We don't bring attention. We don't disrespect neighborhoods. We don't kill unless there's no other choice. One by one, the men nodded. Those weren't suggestions. They were rules. Rules written in blood long before this meeting. Ghost dismissed everyone except Rel. When the room emptied, Rel leaned against the wall. You know what's coming? Ghost didn't answer. Philly. Silence. D.C. Silence. Eventually somebody's gonna test us. Ghost looked toward the old boxing ring. My father used to tell me something. Rel waited. He said the loudest man in the room usually dies first. Rel laughed. Your father wasn't from Harlem? No. Ghost smiled faintly. He lived long enough to teach me. Across the city. Inside a luxury penthouse overlooking Central Park, Raphael Cruz poured himself a glass of wine. A second phone rang. He answered immediately. It's done. A distorted voice spoke through a voice changer. Did Ghost believe you? Yes, and Philadelphia. They'll react exactly how we expected. The voice chuckled. Good. What about Washington? They're already in position. Raphael looked out over Manhattan. And Ghost? The voice became cold. Every can eventually mistakes the crown for armor. The call ended. Raphael slowly lowered the phone. For the first time all night, he looked afraid. Just before sunrise, Ghost stood alone on the rooftop of his apartment building overlooking Harlem. The city glowed orange as the first light touched the skyline. A church bell rang in the distance. He closed his eyes. For a brief moment, he imagined a different life. No meetings, no coded phone calls, no funerals, no detectives. Just peace. His phone vibrated. One message, unknown number. It contained only 6 words. "They're already inside your circle." Ghost stared at the screen, then slowly looked out over the waking city. Somewhere below, someone he trusted had already betrayed him. Midnight Kings. Chapter 2. Harlem Rules. The message stayed on Ghost's phone for exactly 12 seconds. Then it disappeared. No number, no thread, no trace. Ghost stood on the rooftop with the sunrise crawling over Harlem, staring at the empty screen like the words were still there. "They're already inside your circle." The city below him was waking up. Delivery trucks groaned through intersections. Metal gates rolled open. A woman in a red coat walked a small dog past the corner store. Somewhere down Lenox, a bus driver leaned on his horn. Normal life moved beneath him. Ghost no longer believed in normal. He slipped the phone into his pocket and walked toward the stairwell. There were 12 men at the meeting. 12 possibilities. Any one of them could be the leak, or the message itself could be bait. That was the problem with paranoia. Once it entered a man's mind, it didn't need proof. It fed on silence, facial expressions, missed calls, and ordinary mistakes until everyone looked guilty. Ghost had watched powerful men destroy themselves that way. He had no intention of joining them. By 8 o'clock, he was sitting inside a small soul food restaurant on 135th Street. The place wasn't open to the public yet. The chairs were still turned upside down on the tables. The smell of coffee, butter, and frying bacon filled the room. Miss Pearl stood behind the counter, wearing an apron and reading glasses. She had known Ghost since he was Malik King, a skinny boy who sometimes came into a restaurant with no money. She would feed him anyway. Now he owned half the building. She still treated him like he owed her for breakfast. "You look tired," she said. "I'm good." "That means you're tired." She poured him coffee. Ghost looked toward the front window. "You expecting somebody?" she asked. "No. You keep watching that window like death parked outside." Ghost took a slow drink. "Death don't park." Miss Pearl stopped wiping the counter. She looked at him over her glasses. "That life got you talking like an old man. I feel like one. You're 34. Street years." She shook her head. "I told your mother this would happen." Ghost's face tightened. "Don't bring her into it." "I'm not bringing her into anything. I'm telling you she saw where you were headed." Ghost looked down at his coffee. His mother had been gone 7 years, but Miss Pearl still spoke about her in the present tense. Some people never became the past. They just became quiet. The side door opened. Ava Monroe stepped inside wearing dark slacks, a cream blouse, and a long camel-colored coat. Her hair was pulled back, and she carried a leather folder under one arm. She looked like she belonged in a corporate boardroom, not a closed restaurant with a man under investigation by half the city. Miss Pearl smiled. "There goes somebody with sense." Ava kissed Miss Pearl on the cheek, then slid into the booth across from Ghost. "You didn't come home." "I had business." "You always have business." Miss Pearl placed a plate of eggs, grits, and turkey sausage in front of Ghost. "You two argue quietly," she said. "I'm trying to cook." Ava waited until Miss Pearl walked away. Then she studied Ghost's face. "What happened?" "Nothing." "You don't call me here for nothing." Ghost looked through the window again. Ava leaned forward. Malik. He turned back to her. You still working on the property deal? Yes. How soon can it close? Which property? All three. Her expression changed. The properties were legitimate investments they had been developing for almost a year. A laundromat in Harlem, a small apartment building in the Bronx, a commercial warehouse in Queens. Ava managed the paperwork through her real estate development company. What's the rush? She asked. No rush. There's always a reason with you. Ghost picked up his fork. I want more money clean. You've said that before. I mean it now. Ava sat back. That sounds like a man preparing for something. Maybe I'm preparing for peace. You don't know how to live in peace. Ghost stopped eating. Ava immediately regretted the words, but she didn't take them back. Ghost looked at her without anger. That's what you think? That's what I've watched. He lowered the fork. You think I enjoy this? I think you understand it. There's a difference. Ghost didn't answer. Ava opened the folder and slid several documents across the table. The Queens warehouse can close in 10 days. The laundromat will take longer. The owner has tax liens. And the building? Financing is approved, but the lender wants documentation on the source of the down payment. Ghost's eyes hardened. Handle it. That's not an answer. It's the answer I got. Ava lowered her voice. Ghost glanced toward Miss Pearl. I didn't call you here to argue. Then why did you call me? Ghost looked at her for a long moment. Because he trusted her. Because he needed to know whether trust still meant anything. Has anybody contacted you about me? Ava frowned. Who? Police, federal agents. Anybody asking questions? No. You sure? Her expression cooled. Why wouldn't I be? Ghost held her gaze. The anonymous message echoed in his mind. Ava slowly closed the folder. You're looking at me like I did something. I'm asking a question. No, you're measuring my answer. Ghost leaned back. I got reason to be careful. You always have a reason. She stood. Sit down. No. Ava. I spent 3 years building legitimate businesses around you. I lied to bankers. I reassured contractors. I defended you to people who looked at your name and saw danger. Now you're sitting here wondering whether I'm talking to police. I never said that. You didn't have to. She picked up the folder. Miss Pearl watched from the counter. Ghost lowered his voice. Somebody close is giving information. Ava paused. For the first time, her anger gave way to concern. What kind of information? I don't know yet. And you thought it could be me? I think it could be anybody. Ava's face went still. That's your problem, Malik. You built a world where loyalty is never enough because suspicion is the only thing keeping you alive. She walked toward the side door. Ghost called after her. Ava. She stopped without turning around. Close the Queen's property. She shook her head and left. Miss Pearl came from behind the counter. You got a real gift. Ghost stared at the door. For what? Turning love into an interrogation. Across Harlem, Rel sat in the back room of a barbershop surrounded by cigarette smoke and old hip-hop records. The shop belonged to Terrence T-Bone Wilson, one of the circle's oldest members. T-Bone was 42, broad-shouldered and quiet. He had been with Ghost and Rel before there was money, structure, or rules. He was also one of the 12 men from the meeting. Rel dropped a thick envelope onto the table. T-Bone looked at it. What's that? Your share. Early. Rel lit a cigar. You complaining? I'm noticing. Rel smiled. That's why I like you. T-Bone opened the envelope, counted quickly, then set it aside. You and Ghost good? We always good. That wasn't my question. Rel leaned back. T-Bone had a way of asking simple questions that didn't feel simple. What you hearing? Rel asked. People saying Philly might move first. People talk. They saying Isaiah Graves don't want a meeting? Rel took a slow pull from the cigar. Then he'll get a funeral. T-Bone frowned. Ghost wouldn't approve that. Ghost don't have to approve everything. The room went quiet. A pair of clippers buzzed beyond the wall. T-Bone studied him. You trying to change how things work? I'm trying to make sure we don't look weak. We never looked weak. That's because people knew what happened when they crossed us. T-Bone nodded toward the cigar. You getting loud, Rel. Rel's smile vanished. You calling me reckless? I'm saying Harlem got rules. Ghost rules. The rules kept us alive. Real stood. Rules also keep men from becoming what they supposed to be. T-Bone remained seated. And what are you supposed to be? Rel looked down at him. More. He left through the rear door. T-Bone waited several seconds before reaching beneath the table and pulling out a second phone. He typed one message. Rel is moving without Ghost. He sent it, then deleted the thread. Detective Brooks arrived at the precinct carrying 2 coffees and a bad feeling. Maria Alvarez was already at her desk. She had photographs spread across the surface. Ghost, Rel, Rafael Cruz, vehicles, buildings, known associates. Brooks handed her a cup. What am I looking at? Traffic cameras from last night. She pointed to a blurred image of Ghost's Range Rover. That's him. We know. She tapped the gray Charger parked down the block. Registered to a shell company in Delaware. Who owns the company? Another company. Brooks smiled without humor. Of course. Maria pulled up another photograph. A man in a tailored suit exiting Ghost's SUV. Rafael Cruz. Brooks leaned closer. Customs has been watching him. For what? Cargo theft, narcotics, money movement. Pick one. Any active case? Nothing they'll share. Brooks looked at the image. Then we make our own. Maria lowered her voice. We might already have something. She opened a drawer and removed a small digital recorder. Brooks frowned. What is that? Our source made contact. When? 2 days ago. You didn't tell me? Because the source was scared. Brooks picked up the recorder. Who is it? You know I can't put the name in the file yet. You can tell me. Maria glanced across the room. Somebody inside the circle. Brooks' face remained still, but his eyes sharpened. How deep? Meeting level access. Brooks pressed play. Static filled the speaker, then a man's distorted voice. They're opening roads through Philadelphia and D.C. Ghost wants control without attention. Rel wants war. They're splitting. Brooks stopped the recording. When's the next contact? Tonight. Where? Source hasn't confirmed. Brooks placed the recorder on the desk. This could be the break. Maria nodded. Or a setup. Brooks looked toward the board where Ghost's photograph hung beneath years of reports. No. He took a sip of coffee. This is fear. Maria studied him. What's the difference? Fear tells the truth faster than loyalty. At noon, Ghost called an emergency meeting, not at the warehouse, not at the gym. At an old brownstone owned by Jerome Lawson, everybody called him OG. He had once controlled more territory than the Circle, but 23 years in federal prison had removed the money, the power, and most of the men who once feared him. He came home with gray hair, a Bible, and no interest in rebuilding. Ghost still listened when he spoke. The brownstone smelled like old wood and incense. Ghost sat across from OG in a room lined with books. Rel stood near the fireplace. T-Bone occupied the chair by the window. Only 4 men, no phones, no outsiders. OG poured tea into 4 cups. Men always call emergency meetings after the emergency already started, he said. Ghost ignored the comment. Somebody inside is talking. Rel's eyes moved toward T-Bone. T-Bone noticed. To who? OG asked. I don't know. How do you know? Ghost explained the message. OG stirred honey into his tea. Rel laughed. So, an anonymous text got everybody nervous? It came after the meeting, Ghost said. Could have been Raphael. Could have been anybody. Rel looked at T-Bone again. T-Bone leaned forward. You got something to say? Rel smiled. You've been asking a lot of questions. That makes me a snitch? I didn't say that. You keep looking at me. OG placed his spoon down. Both of you shut up. The room became still. OG looked at Ghost. Who benefits from you doubting your people? An enemy. Who benefits from Rel feeling like you don't trust him? Ghost glanced at Rel. Same answer. OG nodded. Then maybe the message wasn't information. Ghost understood immediately. It was a weapon. Exactly. Rel folded his arms. So we ignore it? No, OG said. You test it. Ghost looked interested. How? Give each man different information. T-Bone nodded slowly. Whichever story gets out tells us where the leak is. Ghost stood and walked toward the window. Below them, children played basketball with a bent rim and no net. He remembered being one of them. Back when Harlem seemed like the whole world. Before New York became a kingdom, before Philadelphia became a problem, before Washington became a threat. What information? Ghost asked. OG answered. Something believable. Rel smiled. Like a shipment. Ghost turned around. 3 shipments. He looked at T-Bone. 3 locations. OG nodded. Only one can be real. Rel's smile widened. And when somebody takes the bait. Ghost's voice remained calm. We don't move until we know who they're working with. Rel's expression changed. He wanted punishment. Ghost wanted answers. That difference between them was becoming harder to hide. The house phone rang. OG looked toward it. Nobody called that number except family. It rang again. OG answered. Hello? He listened. Then his eyes moved toward Ghost. For you. Ghost took the receiver. Who is this? A man's voice answered, deep, controlled. You've been asking about Philadelphia. Ghost recognized the name before the man said it. Isaiah Graves. A quiet laugh came through the line. So you do your homework. What do you want? To save us both some time. Ghost looked at Rel. Rel moved closer. Isaiah continued. Stay out of North Philly. Ghost's tone didn't change. I don't take orders. Everybody takes orders. Some come from men. Others come from consequences. Ghost gripped the receiver tighter. This call your idea of diplomacy? No. Isaiah paused. This is mercy. The line went dead. Ghost slowly lowered the phone. Rel's eyes burned with excitement. What'd he say? Ghost placed the receiver back in its cradle. He made a mistake. Rel smiled. Finally. Ghost looked at him. He called before we moved. OG understood. That means he's afraid of what he heard. Or somebody told him more than they should know, T-Bone added. Ghost turned toward the window again. On the street below, a black sedan sat double parked, dark tint, engine running. Ghost watched it for 3 seconds, then 4. The sedan pulled away. His phone was locked in a metal box in the hallway. So were the others. Yet Isaiah Graves had called OG's private house line minutes after they arrived. Ghost looked around the room. Nobody had told anyone where the meeting was. At least, nobody was supposed to. He faced the 3 men he had trusted longer than almost anyone alive. The leak isn't just inside the circle. Rel frowned. What you mean? Ghost stared at the silent house phone. They know where we are before we get there. Outside, the sedan disappeared around the corner, and somewhere between Harlem and Philadelphia, someone was already preparing the first body. Midnight Kings. Chapter 3. The Philly Connection. The body was discovered before sunset. A sanitation worker found it behind an abandoned row house in North Philadelphia, wedged between a rusted refrigerator and 3 black trash bags. 1 gunshot, close range, no wallet, no phone, no identification. But the dead man had a tattoo behind his left ear that told the streets everything the police didn't know. A small black circle, broken at the bottom. The mark of Ghost's organization. By the time detectives stretched yellow tape across the alley, pictures of the body had already reached Harlem. Ghost studied one of them from the back seat of his Range Rover. The dead man's name was Jamal Malik Turner, 26 years old. Born in the Bronx, raised in Harlem, he had been running small jobs for the Circle for 4 years and had never missed a payment. He wasn't high-ranking. He wasn't important enough to be targeted. That was exactly why somebody had chosen him. Rel sat beside Ghost, staring at the photograph. They sent a message. Ghost locked the phone. No, they asked a question. Rel turned toward him. What question? How fast we react. The Range Rover moved south on the New Jersey Turnpike. Behind them, 2 black Suburbans carried 6 more men. No rental cars, no guns registered to anyone in the convoy. No one wore jewelry. Ghost had ordered everyone to dress like businessmen. Rel hated it. He wanted masks. He wanted rifles. He wanted Philadelphia to see them coming. Ghost wanted the opposite. Man dead with our mark on him, Rel said. You still talking about patience. Because patience keeps one body from becoming 10. Rel looked through the window. Sometimes 10 bodies keep it from becoming 20. Ghost didn't answer. The skyline faded behind them. Ava had called twice. He hadn't answered. Detective Brooks had likely already heard about the murder. Ghost could feel the walls closing in, though no wall was visible. That was how pressure worked. It rarely announced itself. It just reduced the space around you. T-Bone drove. He glanced into the mirror. You sure Graves agreed to meet? He agreed to hear us, Ghost said. That ain't the same thing. It's enough. Rel laughed quietly. For you? Ghost turned toward him. You got something to say? I've been saying it. Then say something useful. The air inside the vehicle changed. T-Bone kept his eyes on the road. Rel's jaw tightened. I think Isaiah killed Malik. Based on what? Based on the body being in his city. That's not proof. You need proof to know what disrespect looks like? I need proof before I start a war. Rel leaned closer. Maybe that's the problem. You still think this ain't already war. Ghost held his stare. You want leadership? Rel smiled without humor. I want survival. Then stop confusing emotion with strategy. T-Bone spoke before Rel could answer. We got company. A dark blue sedan had been behind them for the last 12 miles. Same distance, same lane changes, no attempt to pass. Ghost looked through the rear window. Don't speed up. Rel reached beneath his coat. Ghost caught his wrist. Not yet. The sedan moved 1 lane to the left. For a moment, it pulled alongside them. The driver was a white man wearing sunglasses. The passenger seat was empty. Rel lowered his hand. The sedan accelerated and disappeared ahead. T-Bone exhaled. Could have been state police. Could have been nobody, Ghost said. Rel looked at him. That's your answer for everything now? Ghost returned his attention to the road. Until I know better. North Philadelphia announced itself through boarded windows, corner stores, murals, and row houses pressed together like people trying to survive winter. Children rode bicycles between parked cars. Old men sat on milk crates watching the street. Young men occupied corners without appearing to wait for anything. Ghost noticed every face. Philadelphia moved differently than New York. Harlem watched strangers. North Philly measured them. The meeting was set inside a closed funeral home near Lehigh Avenue. The place had belonged to Isaiah Graves' uncle before cancer took him. Now it served as neutral ground. No music, no crowds, no phones. Ghost's convoy parked 2 blocks away. He entered with Rel and T-Bone, 3 men. No visible weapons. A thick-set man in a gray suit met them at the side entrance. He patted each one down. Rel spread his arms. "You enjoying yourself?" The man ignored him. Inside, the funeral home smelled of furniture polish and old flowers. Empty viewing rooms lined the hallway. A gold-framed picture of Jesus hung crooked above a water fountain. Isaiah Graves waited in the largest room. He sat in the front row facing an empty casket. Scar across his left cheek, black Phillies cap, dark sweater, no jewelry, no smile. 2 men stood behind him. Ghost recognized him from Raphael's photograph. Isaiah didn't stand. "You came fast." Ghost took a seat across the aisle. "You made it." Rel remained standing. Isaiah looked at him. "This the one with the temper?" Rel smiled. "This the one with the scar?" Isaiah's men shifted. Ghost raised one finger. Rel stopped. Isaiah noticed. "That's discipline." "That's respect," Ghost said. "For you, for the room." Isaiah looked toward the empty casket. "My uncle buried half this neighborhood." "Good man." "He buried good men, bad ones too." Ghost glanced around. "Which kind was Malik?" Isaiah's expression didn't change. "Who?" "The man found behind the row house." "Police identify him." "You know they didn't." "Then maybe you shouldn't either." Rel stepped forward. Ghost spoke without turning. "Rel." Rel froze. Isaiah leaned back. "You think I killed your man?" "I think somebody wanted me to think you did." "That's not an answer. It's the only honest one." Isaiah's eyes narrowed. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Then Isaiah nodded to one of his men. A photograph was placed on the empty chair between them. Ghost picked it up. Malik stood outside a nightclub beside a woman in a red dress. The picture was time-stamped 3 nights earlier. "Who is she?" Ghost asked. "Name's Simone Tate," Isaiah said. "Works bottle service, sometimes passes messages." "For who?" "Whoever pays." Rel leaned over Ghost's shoulder. "She's still alive." "For now." Ghost examined the background. A man stood near the club entrance, tall, long beard, gray overcoat. His face was partially turned away. "Who's that?" Isaiah answered. "Councilman Leonard Hayes' nephew." Ghost looked up. "Washington." Isaiah nodded. "Damon Hayes." The same political connection Raphael had mentioned. Ghost placed the photograph down. "What was Malik doing with him?" "That's what I wanted to ask you." "He wasn't authorized to meet anyone." "Then your people don't listen." Rel's voice hardened. "Or somebody used him." Isaiah looked at Rel again. "Now you thinking?" Ghost ignored the insult. "Where did you get this picture?" "Club security." "Why were you looking?" "Because strangers entered my city talking about routes. We haven't moved anything." "Not yet." Ghost leaned forward. "Then why threaten me?" "Because I don't wait for fires to reach my house." "Neither do I." The room became still. Isaiah pointed toward the casket. "You see that?" Ghost looked at it. "My brother was supposed to be buried in one like that." "What happened?" "Couldn't find enough of him." Rel's face lost some of its arrogance. Isaiah continued. 14 years ago, men from New York came down here with money, promises, and no respect. They paid local boys to fight local wars. When it was over, they went home." Ghost listened. Philadelphia buried the bodies. I'm not those men. That's what every new man says. Ghost sat back. I didn't come here to take your city. You came for profit. So did you. Isaiah smiled faintly. Finally, some truth. He rose. Isaiah was taller than the photograph suggested. He walked toward the casket and rested one hand on its polished lid. Your man met Damon Hayes. 12 hours later, he was dead. Before that, Raphael Cruz was seen with 2 of my people. Ghost's expression sharpened. Which people? They're missing. Since when? Yesterday. Rel cursed under his breath. Isaiah turned. So either you came to Philadelphia planning something bigger than you admit. He paused. Or somebody is placing pieces on a board and waiting for us to attack each other. Ghost thought about the anonymous message, the private phone call, the sedan outside OG's brownstone, Raphael's warning, Washington. Every road pointed in 2 directions at once. Where's Simone? Ghost asked. Isaiah studied him. Safe. I need to speak to her. You don't need anything in my city. She may know who killed Malik. She may know who's trying to kill both of us. Ghost nodded. Then we both speak to her. Rel stepped beside him. That's not happening. Ghost turned. It is. Rel lowered his voice. We don't know these people. We don't know our own people. The words landed harder than Ghost intended. T-Bone looked away. Rel stared at him. Isaiah watched the tension between them with interest. Finally, he said, Tonight, 11 o'clock. Where? You'll get the location 10 minutes before. Rel laughed. No. Ghost kept his eyes on Isaiah. We'll be there. Isaiah's men moved toward the door. The meeting was over. Before Ghost stood, Isaiah spoke again. One more thing. Ghost waited. If I wanted your man dead, I wouldn't leave him in an alley. What would you do? Isaiah looked toward the casket. I'd send him home. Detective Brooks arrived in Philadelphia 30 minutes after Ghost. He sat inside an unmarked government sedan across from a coffee shop while Maria spoke with a local homicide detective. Brooks hated working outside New York. Different departments protected different secrets. Everybody wanted information. Nobody wanted to share it. Maria returned and climbed into the passenger seat. They found no casings. Revolver? Maybe. No defensive wounds. Victim knew the shooter or got surprised. Identification? Still unofficial. Brooks handed her a photograph. Malik Turner. She looked at it. You sure? Facial recognition gave 87%. That won't hold. It doesn't have to. We're not charging him. Maria glanced toward the street. You think Ghost is here for revenge? I think Rel is. And Ghost. Brooks watched a dark Range Rover turn at the next intersection. He's here to stop him. Maria followed his eyes. That them? Maybe. She reached for the radio. Brooks stopped her. No tail. Why? They spotted us on the turnpike. You were following them? Not me. Maria frowned. Brooks handed her another file. FBI surveillance unit. They're involved now. They've been involved. Maria opened the folder. Pictures of Raphael Cruz, shipping records, warehouse leases, cash transfers. Why didn't they tell us? Because they think somebody in our unit is leaking. Maria slowly looked at him. Our unit? Brooks nodded. The silence between them became heavy. She closed the folder. You believe that? I believe everybody protects something. Her eyes hardened. That include me? Brooks looked through the windshield. It includes me too. Maria's phone buzzed. She read the message. Our source wants to meet. Where? Tonight, Philadelphia. Brooks turned toward her. What time? 11. Ghost's people rented 3 rooms at a small hotel near City Hall. He ordered everyone to stay inside. No clubs, no women, no alcohol. Rel ignored him within the hour. Ghost found him in the parking garage standing beside a black Mercedes with 2 local men. The conversation stopped when Ghost approached. The men walked away. Ghost waited until they were alone. Who were they? Friends. We don't have friends here. Rel lit a cigarette. You don't? Ghost stepped closer. I gave an order. You gave a suggestion. Ghost slapped the cigarette from his mouth. Rel's expression turned dark. T-Bone, watching from across the garage, moved closer. Ghost didn't flinch. You want to challenge me? Do it clearly? Rel stared into his eyes. You embarrassed me in that funeral home. You embarrassed yourself. You trusted Isaiah over me. I trusted information. He could be setting us up. So could you. The words escaped before Ghost could pull them back. Rel's face went still. T-Bone stopped walking. Ghost and Rel had fought before, as boys, as teenagers, as men. But this was different. This wasn't anger. It was a crack. Rel nodded slowly. That's what you think? I think somebody inside is moving wrong. And because I don't bow every time you speak, it must be me. I didn't say that. You keep saying things without saying them. Ghost lowered his voice. Malik met a man from Washington without permission. What that got to do with me? I'm still finding out. Rel smiled bitterly. Maybe you should find out who sent that message before accusing the only man who'd been with you from the beginning. He walked away. Ghost didn't stop him. T-Bone approached. You pushed too hard. Maybe. You think he's the leak? Ghost watched Rel disappear into the stairwell. I think he's hiding something. That ain't the same. No. Ghost turned toward T-Bone. But sometimes it leads to the same place. At 10:50 p.m., Isaiah's message arrived. An address in West Philadelphia. An old Catholic school closed for renovations. Ghost took only T-Bone. Rel was nowhere to be found. They entered through a side door and followed a dim hallway into a classroom. Desks were stacked against the walls. A single lamp burned on the teacher's table. Isaiah stood near the blackboard. Simone Tate sat in a chair beside him. She looked younger than the nightclub photograph, maybe 24. Her hands trembled. Ghost pulled out a chair. Tell me about Malik. Simone looked at Isaiah. He nodded. He said he needed money. For what? Ghost asked. He owed somebody? Who? I don't know. Ghost leaned forward. You passed a message between him and Damon Hayes? She swallowed. Yes. What message? Simone looked toward the door. That Harlem was open. Ghost's face hardened. Open for what? Take over. T-Bone stepped closer. Who told him to say that? Simone's eyes filled with tears. He said it came from Ghost. The room went silent. Ghost's voice became quiet. Malik knew better. I told him that. What else? He said the circle was splitting. He said Rel had his own people and was ready to move. Ghost felt something cold settle in his chest. T-Bone looked at him. Isaiah crossed his arms. Ghost asked the final question. Where was Rel supposed to meet Damon? Simone opened her mouth. A window shattered. Isaiah threw himself down. T-Bone reached beneath his jacket. 2 suppressed shots struck him in the chest. He fell backward into the desks. Ghost hit the floor as bullets tore through the classroom wall. Simone screamed. Isaiah dragged her behind the teacher's table. Ghost crawled toward T-Bone. Blood spread across his shirt. T-Bone! T-Bone's eyes struggled to focus. Ghost pressed both hands against the wounds. Stay with me. Outside, tires screamed. Isaiah's men returned fire from the hallway. Then silence. Ghost looked toward the shattered window. Across the street, a dark blue sedan disappeared around the corner, the same color as the car from the turnpike. T-Bone grabbed Ghost's coat. His voice came out wet and broken. "Rel." Ghost leaned closer. "What about him?" T-Bone coughed blood. "He ain't..." His grip weakened. Ghost shook him. "He ain't what?" T-Bone forced out two final words. "The leak." Then his hand fell. Ghost stared down at one of the oldest members of the circle. One of the 12, one of the few men he still trusted, dead in a Philadelphia classroom. Isaiah stood behind him. Whoever did this knew the location. Ghost looked toward Simone. Only 4 people were supposed to know: Isaiah, Simone, Ghost, and T-Bone. But somewhere outside, someone had known before they arrived. Ghost's phone vibrated, a message from Rel. "You should have trusted me." Ghost looked at the shattered window, then at T-Bone's body. For the first time, he understood the real danger. The enemy wasn't trying to enter the circle. The enemy was trying to make Ghost destroy it himself. Midnight Kings. Chapter 4. District Business. T-Bone's blood dried beneath Ghost's fingernails before the police arrived. Isaiah moved first. He pulled Simone through the hallway while his men cleared the rear exit. Ghost remained on the classroom floor beside T-Bone, staring at the 2 holes in his chest. He had seen death before. Too many times. But some deaths felt different. Some bodies carried history. T-Bone had been there when Ghost and Rel made their first $1,000. He had hidden them in his mother's basement after their first street war. He had stood beside them when the circle was only 4 hungry boys sharing one pistol. Now he was dead in a Catholic school 2 hours from home, and Ghost had brought him there. Sirens echoed in the distance. Isaiah stepped back into the classroom. "We have to move." Ghost didn't answer. "If police find you beside him, you're finished." Ghost pressed his fingers against T-Bone's neck even though he already knew there was no pulse. Isaiah grabbed his shoulder. "He's gone." Ghost turned slowly. Isaiah released him. For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Ghost stood. He took T-Bone's wallet, watch, and phone. He left the cash in his pocket. A man should never arrive home empty, even in death. "What about his body?" Ghost asked. "My people will make sure his family gets him. I'm not leaving him here." "You don't have a choice." Ghost stepped closer. "I always have a choice." Isaiah held his ground. "Then choose whether his family gets a funeral or has to visit you in prison." The sirens grew louder. Blue light flashed against the broken classroom windows. Ghost looked down at T-Bone one final time. "I'm coming back for you." Isaiah led him out through the boiler room. They crossed a narrow courtyard, climbed a metal fence, and entered the back seat of a waiting car. Simone lay across the floorboard beneath a blanket, shaking uncontrollably. Isaiah's driver pulled away without headlights. At the end of the block, 2 police cruisers raced past them in the opposite direction. Ghost looked through the rear window. The school disappeared behind red and blue lights. His phone vibrated again. "Real." Ghost answered. "Where are you?" Rel's voice was tense. "At the hotel." "Stay there." "What happened?" "T-Bone is dead." Silence. Then Rel said, "What?" "They hit the meeting." "Who?" "I don't know. You took him and left me." Ghost heard the accusation beneath the shock. "This isn't the time." "It became the time when you stopped trusting me." "I said stay at the hotel." "Ghost." The call ended. Isaiah watched him from the opposite seat. "You believe him?" Ghost slid the phone into his pocket. "I believe he didn't pull that trigger." "That wasn't my question." Ghost stared out the window. Trust was no longer something he felt. It was something he calculated. Detective Brooks heard the shots from 6 blocks away. By the time he and Maria reached the school, local officers had already surrounded the building. An ambulance blocked the main entrance. A patrolman shouted at them to stay behind the line. Brooks displayed his badge. NYPD, Joint Organized Crime Investigation. The officer looked unimpressed. This is Philadelphia. A New York target may be inside. You got paperwork? Brooks stepped closer. I've got a body connected to an interstate criminal organization. The officer turned toward a homicide detective standing near the school steps. 5 minutes later, Brooks was inside the classroom. Blood covered the floor between overturned desks. 2 spent bullets were buried in the far wall. Glass glittered beneath the window. Maria crouched near the blood. One victim? Witnesses heard vehicles leaving, the local detective said. One body. No identification. Brooks looked at T-Bone. He recognized him immediately. Terrence Wilson, no major convictions. Barbershop owner, known associate of Malik King. Brooks had watched T-Bone enter Ghost's warehouse more than 20 times. What was he doing here? Maria asked. Meeting somebody? Ghost? Probably. The local detective folded his arms. You know the victim? Brooks avoided the question. Any cameras? School system was disconnected. Street cameras? Already checking. Mariah walked toward the shattered window. Shooter fired from outside. Maybe 2 shooters, the detective said. Suppressed weapons. Neighbors heard glass, but not much else. Brooks examined the angle. The gunman had known exactly which classroom to target. This wasn't an attack of opportunity. It was an execution. Maria's phone buzzed. She read the message and lowered her voice. Our source missed the meeting. Why? Claims somebody moved the location. Brooks looked at her. Who knew the location? The source says only a handful of people. Brooks glanced at T-Bone's body. Was he one of them? Mariah didn't answer. The local detective stepped away to speak with a uniformed officer. Brooks moved closer to Maria. Your source is Rel, isn't it? Her face revealed nothing. That's a dangerous guess. You keep protecting him. I'm protecting an investigation. You said the source had meeting-level access. Rel disappeared from the hotel before the shooting. Now the source suddenly wants distance. Maria's eyes narrowed. You followed him. I followed Ghost. That's not what I asked. Brooks lowered his voice. Whoever your source is, they're either compromised or lying. Maria glanced toward the other officers. You think I don't know that? I think you've gotten too close. Her expression hardened. You've been obsessed with Ghost for 6 years. Don't lecture me about distance. Brooks looked at T-Bone again. This is getting bigger than Ghost. It always was. Maria walked away. Brooks watched her cross the classroom. For the first time since they became partners, he wondered whether she was protecting the source from the investigation. Or protecting the investigation from the source. Rel waited in the hotel suite with a pistol resting on the table. Every member of the convoy had been ordered into one room. 6 men. No one spoke. The television played silently on the wall. A local news banner showed police activity outside a West Philadelphia school. Rel paced between the windows. One of the younger members, Sean Lil St. Davis, sat on the arm of a chair. What happened to T-Bone? Rel looked at him. You know as much as I do. They saying he dead? Rel stopped pacing. Who said that? People online. Ghost had banned social media during business, yet Lil Saint held a phone in his hand. Rel snatched it away. A photograph of the school was already circulating. Comments mentioned one unidentified victim. No image of the body. No confirmation. Still, the streets moved faster than official truth. Rel threw the phone onto the couch. Everybody empty your pockets. The men hesitated. I said empty them. Phones, keys, and wallets landed on the coffee table. Rel searched each person himself. When he reached Lil Saint, he found a second phone taped inside the waistband of his jeans. The room went silent. Rel held it up. "What's this?" Lil Saint's eyes widened. "Just another line." Ghost said one phone. "I forgot I had it." Rel slapped him hard enough to send him into the wall. Nobody moved. "You forgot." Lil Saint touched his split lip. "It ain't like that." Rel unlocked the phone using the young man's face. The screen opened to a message thread. Most of it had been deleted. One message remained. Did they reach the school? Rel read it twice, then looked at Lil Saint. "Who sent this?" "I don't know." Rel struck him again. Lil Saint fell. Two men moved forward. Rel raised the pistol. "Back up!" They stopped. Lil Saint pressed himself against the wall. "I swear, Rel, somebody been texting me." "Why?" "They wanted to know where Ghost was going." "And you told them?" "No." Rel aimed the pistol at his forehead. "Read the message again." Lil Saint started crying. "I only said he left the hotel." The room erupted. One man cursed. Another turned away in disgust. Rel grabbed Lil Saint by the shirt and pulled him up. "You gave them T-Bone." "I didn't know." "You gave them the location." "I never knew the school." "You gave them enough to follow." Lil Saint shook violently. "They said it was just business. They said nobody would get hurt." Rel pressed the barrel under his chin. "That's what people say when they already picked the body." The suite door opened. Ghost entered with Isaiah behind him. Every man froze. Ghost looked at Lil Saint, then at the gun. "What happened?" Rel tossed the second phone onto the table. "Found your leak." Ghost picked it up and read the remaining message. His face showed nothing. "Who's the number?" "Blocked," Rel said. Ghost looked at Lil Saint. "How long?" The young man couldn't meet his eyes. "A few weeks." "What did you tell them?" "Nothing important." Rel laughed bitterly. T-Bone dead because of nothing important. Ghost stepped closer. "Who approached you?" "A woman." "Name?" "She called herself Simone." Isaiah's head snapped toward him. Ghost looked back. "The same Simone?" Isaiah grabbed Lil Saint by the collar. "What did she look like?" "Light skin, long hair, tattoo on her wrist." Isaiah released him. The Simone hidden in his safe location had no tattoo. Ghost understood immediately. "Somebody used her name." Isaiah pulled out his phone. "I have to check on her." Ghost stopped him. "No calls." Isaiah stared at him. "She may already be exposed." "That's exactly why you don't call." Rel pointed toward Lil Saint. "What are we doing with him?" Ghost looked at the young man. Lil Saint had joined the circle at 19 after his older brother was killed. T-Bone had vouched for him. Ghost remembered T-Bone saying the boy needed guidance. Now T-Bone was dead. "Take him back to New York," Ghost said. Rel frowned. "That's it?" "We need to know who's behind the number." He confessed. "To stupidity, not murder." Rel stepped closer. "You always got a reason to wait. And you always got a reason to shoot. He got T-Bone killed." Ghost's voice sharpened. "No, the people who manipulated him got T-Bone killed." Lil Saint began crying harder. Rel looked disgusted. "So weakness gets mercy now?" Ghost stared at him. "No." He took the pistol from Rel's hand. "Weakness gets used." He nodded toward two men. "Put Lil Saint in the bathroom. Watch him." They dragged the young man away. Rel leaned close to Ghost. "You protect everybody except the people loyal to you." Ghost didn't answer, because part of him agreed. The convoy left Philadelphia before dawn. T-Bone's body remained behind. Ghost hated that more than he admitted. Isaiah sent 2 men to retrieve Simone from the safe apartment, but when they arrived, she was gone. No struggle, no blood. Her overnight bag was still there. The bathroom window was open. That made 3 missing people connected to Rafael Cruz, Isaiah's 2 associates. Now Simone. The enemy wasn't leaving witnesses. It was collecting them. At a rest stop outside Baltimore, Ghost called Ava. She answered on the 5th ring. What? I need you to leave New York. A pause. Why? Go to your sister's place. In Maryland? Yes. What happened? I can't explain. You never can. Ava, listen to me. She heard something in his voice. The anger disappeared. Are you hurt? No. Is Rel? No. Then who? Ghost looked across the parking lot at the convoy. T-Bone. Ava went silent. She had known him for years. He had fixed her first car without charging her. He had stood outside her mother's funeral for 6 hours because Ghost couldn't attend safely. What happened? She whispered. He's gone. Oh, God. I need you out of the city. You think somebody might come after me? I'm not giving them the chance. Ava breathed shakily. What about you? I have to handle this. That's what you always say before things get worse. This time is different. It's never different to the people burying somebody. Ghost closed his eyes. I'm trying to keep you alive. And who keeps you alive? He looked toward Rel, standing near the gas pumps. I used to know. Ava didn't respond. Pack light, Ghost said. Use the car registered to your company. Don't tell anybody where you're going. Malik, please. It was the first time she had heard him say that word in months. I'll leave, she said. The call ended. Ghost stared at the phone. A black SUV entered the parking lot and stopped near the far exit. District of Columbia plates. 2 men sat inside. They didn't get out. Ghost watched them. The driver raised a phone. Then the SUV pulled away. Ghost walked toward Rel. We're being tracked. Rel looked toward the exit. Philly? No. How you know? DC plates. Rel's face tightened. Damon Hayes. Maybe. Rel opened the passenger door. Then let's stop guessing. Ghost caught the door before he entered. We're not going home. Rel looked at him. Where are we going? Washington. T-Bone's death had changed the board. Ghost no longer intended to wait for the next message. He wanted the man whose name kept appearing behind every betrayal. Damon Hayes, the councilman's nephew. The political connection Raphael had offered like a gift. Ghost gathered the convoy beside the vehicles. New plan, he said. 3 cars return to Harlem. Make it look like I'm with them. What about us? Rel asked. You, me, and 2 others take a different car south. To D.C.? Ghost nodded. Rel smiled for the first time since learning T-Bone was dead. Now, we moving. Ghost stepped close enough that only Rel could hear him. This isn't revenge. Everything is revenge after somebody dies. It's intelligence. Rel shook his head. You can call a gun whatever you want. It still fires the same. By 8 that morning, Damon Hayes was seated inside a private dining room 3 blocks from the United States Capitol. He wore a navy suit and gold cufflinks. Across from him sat Rafael Cruz. A television on the wall showed footage from the Philadelphia school. The news anchor described the victim as an unidentified black male. Damon cut into his steak. Was Ghost there? Rafael drank coffee. Yes. And Simone? Missing. Damon smiled. Good. Rafael studied him. You weren't supposed to kill anyone. I didn't. Your people did. My people solve problems. T-Bone wasn't the problem. He was close enough. Raphael lowered his voice. You're pushing Ghost toward Washington. That's the idea. Why? Damon placed his knife down. Because men like Malik King are easiest to destroy when they believe they're attacking. You underestimate him. No. Damon smiled. I understand him. A side door opened. A woman entered wearing a red dress beneath a black coat. Simone Tate. Alive. She sat beside Damon. Raphael's face changed. You said she was missing. She is. Simone removed a cigarette from her purse. Damon lit it for her. Raphael looked between them. What did she tell Ghost? Enough truth to make the lie believable. And Lil Saint? Compromised. Raphael leaned back. This is getting careless. Damon's smile disappeared. Careless is crossing 3 cities without owning the people who run them. He turned toward Simone. Did Ghost believe Rel was moving against him? For a while. And now? T-Bone told him Rel wasn't the leak. Damon's jaw tightened. He spoke before he died. 2 words. Raphael looked toward the television. That could change everything. Damon picked up his coffee. No. Outside, black government vehicles passed beneath the window. This only works if Ghost and Rel stay together long enough to reach Washington. Raphael frowned. What happens when they get here? Damon looked toward the Capitol dome. We make one of them a king. He took a slow drink. And bury the other one as a traitor. Miles away, Ghost's car crossed into the District of Columbia. He didn't know Simone was alive. He didn't know Raphael was waiting. He didn't know the men hunting him had already decided which brother they wanted to survive. All Ghost knew was that T-Bone was dead. And Washington owed him answers. Midnight Kings. Chapter 5. The Crossroads. Atlanta didn't ask for permission. It became the center of everything because every road eventually found its way there. Ghost looked through the windshield as downtown Atlanta came into view. Glass towers reflected the morning sun while 18-wheelers rolled along the interstate in an endless chain of steel and diesel. New York was built on power. Philadelphia was built on pride. Washington was built on influence. Atlanta was built on movement. That made it the most dangerous city Ghost had visited. Rel sat in the passenger seat, unusually quiet. Neither man had slept since leaving Philadelphia. T-Bone's death still hung between them like smoke. You sure about this? Rel finally asked. Ghost nodded. We're already in too deep. I still think we should have handled Philly. We handled what we came to handle. Rel looked out the window. No, we survived it. Ghost didn't argue. Sometimes surviving was the victory. Sometimes it was only the beginning. 20 minutes later, their SUV turned into a renovated warehouse district on Atlanta's west side. A modern black building stood at the end of the street. Large silver letters stretched across the front. Renegade Music. Luxury SUVs filled the parking lot. A tour bus sat near the loading dock. Young artists walked in and out carrying laptops, cameras, guitars, and hard drives. Nothing about the place resembled the organizations Ghost knew. It looked like success. Legitimate success. A man wearing a black hoodie stepped outside before Ghost could reach the entrance. Medium build, calm eyes, no jewelry except a simple watch. He extended his hand. Malik King. Ghost shook it. Deshaun Jones. Most people in the industry called him Streetlit, the CEO of Renegade Music, one of the fastest growing independent labels in the South. Streetlit smiled. I've heard a lot about you. I imagine half of it ain't true. The other half is enough. Rel stepped beside Ghost. Streetlit nodded respectfully. You must be Rel. Rel looked surprised. You know me? I know everybody I might end up doing business with. Ghost noticed something immediately. Streetlit wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't trying to intimidate anyone either. He simply looked like a man completely comfortable in his own building. "Come on," Streetlit said. "I want to show you something." Inside, the headquarters buzzed with activity. Engineers mixed records inside glass studios. Editors worked on music videos. Graphic designers built album covers. Marketing teams monitored streaming numbers displayed across giant screens. Everything moved with purpose. Ghost watched employees greet Streetlit with respect. Not fear. Respect. That was different. Streetlit stopped outside Studio A. "You hear that?" Music shook the walls. A woman's voice cut through the speakers with confidence and authority. Streetlit smiled. "Pretty C." He opened the studio door. A light-skinned black woman stood in front of a microphone wearing headphones. She wasn't reading lyrics. She wasn't searching for words. She attacked every bar like she had lived every line. When the verse ended, she removed her headphones. "Who the visitors?" Streetlit introduced them. "Ghost, Rel." Pretty C nodded. "I've heard stories." Ghost smiled. "I hope the good ones." "There aren't good stories where y'all come from." Rel laughed. "I like her already." Pretty C looked directly at him. "Don't." The room burst into laughter. Streetlit shook his head. "She tells everybody that." Pretty C folded her arms. "My music speaks for itself." Ghost could see why she was becoming a star. She wasn't pretending. Confidence like hers couldn't be manufactured. Streetlit checked his watch. "OG Ball here?" One of the engineers sighed. "He got into it outside." Streetlit closed his eyes. "Again?" Outside, a crowd surrounded two young men arguing beside a Dodge Hellcat. One of them wore diamond earrings and a renegade chain. The other had blood running from his lip. OG Ball, 21 years old, millions of streams, millions of problems. Streetlit walked directly between them. "Enough." OG Ball pointed toward the other man. "He reached for me." The other man shook his head. "I asked for a picture." "You grabbed my chain." Streetlit looked at the security cameras. "No more talking." He turned toward security. "Pull the footage." OG Ball looked frustrated. "You don't believe me?" Streetlit answered calmly. "I believe cameras." Ghost watched closely. In New York, this would have ended with gunfire. Streetlit refused to let emotion make decisions. Rel leaned toward Ghost. "He reminds me of you." Ghost nodded. "Years ago?" Streetlit looked at OG Ball. "You got the world watching you now." OG Ball stayed silent. "You can become the biggest artist in the country." Streetlit stepped closer. "Or become another headline." OG Ball looked down. "I know." "No." Streetlit pointed toward the building. "You know lyrics. You still learning consequences." Ghost respected that. Leadership wasn't always loud. An hour later, Ghost, Rel, Streetlit, Pretty C, and OG Ball gathered inside a conference room. A massive map of the United States covered one wall. Colored lines connected major cities. Ghost stood. "This ain't music." Streetlit smiled. "No, it's business." He walked to the map. "This city wins because everything moved through it." He pointed to Atlanta. "Companies build distribution centers here because freight can move efficiently in multiple directions." His finger traced Interstate 20 West. Westbound traffic connects toward Texas through one of the busiest freight corridors in the country. Then he pointed north and south. Interstate 75 and 85 make Atlanta one of the biggest transportation hubs in America. Pretty C leaned back. "Everything comes through Atlanta." Streetlit nodded. "Music tours, merchandise, production equipment, trucks, warehouses." Ghost studied the map. "You built a label." Streetlit smiled. "I built infrastructure." Rel looked around the room. So, why meet with us? Streetlit answered honestly. Because somebody's trying to start a war between every major city. Ghost's expression changed. You know that? I know money. Streetlit tapped another screen. Bank transfers appeared. Shell companies, marketing agencies, fake concert promoters, tour reimbursements. Everything looked legitimate. Until it didn't. They're moving millions through fake entertainment businesses. Ghost leaned closer. And you found it? They tried to recruit me. The room went silent. They offered Renegade Music unlimited financing. Pretty C frowned. You never told me that. I wanted proof first. OG Ball crossed his arms. So who behind it? Streetlit looked directly at Ghost. The same people behind T-Bone. Ghost felt his pulse slow. You know their names? No. I know their pattern. He changed the screen again. 3 cities appeared. New York, Philadelphia, Washington, then a 4th, Atlanta. They create conflict. They wait for organizations to destroy each other. Then they step in and control what's left. Ghost looked toward Rel. This was never about territory. Streetlit nodded. It was about replacing leadership. Before anyone could respond, Streetlit's executive assistant rushed into the room. Boss, what? She held up a tablet. You need to see this. A live news conference filled the screen. Detective Isaiah Brooks stood beside federal agents. Behind him were photographs of Ghost, Rel, Rafael Cruz, and, to everyone's surprise, the Renegade Music logo. Ghost slowly stood. Streetlit didn't take his eyes off the screen. The reporter asked, Detective Brooks, are you saying Renegade Music is part of this investigation? Brooks answered carefully. We are investigating whether legitimate entertainment businesses are being exploited by a larger criminal enterprise. At this time, no conclusions have been reached. Streetlit turned off the television. They just changed the game. Ghost nodded. They're forcing everybody into the light. Outside the conference room, Pretty C looked through the studio window at dozens of young artists creating music. G. Ball stared toward the parking lot where fans had begun gathering. Neither artist realized that a federal investigation, a political conspiracy, and a multi-city criminal network had just collided with the music business. And before the week was over, Renegade Music would have to decide whether it was simply a record label, or the last place where Ghost could find allies before the people hunting him closed every door. Midnight Kings. Chapter 6. Renegade Rules. The news conference played on every screen inside Renegade Music for the next 12 minutes. No one spoke. Ghost stood with his arms folded, watching Detective Isaiah Brooks carefully avoid saying the words that would destroy Streetlit's entire operation overnight. The camera loved Brooks. The badge, the tired eyes, the measured voice. He looked like a man who had been hunting the same ghost for years and finally smelled blood. Streetlit muted the television. They just put my company on the board. Ghost nodded once. That was the point. Rel walked the length of the conference table. We need to leave, tonight. Streetlit looked at him. You run, they win twice. Once for making you look guilty, once for making me look like I was hiding you. Pretty C leaned against the glass wall, arms crossed. They're not just coming for Ghost. They're coming for anybody who ever took money that moved through the wrong hands. OG Ball sat in the corner, phone face down on the table for the first time since they arrived. My stream's still going up, he said quietly. This is about to get real ugly for me. Streetlit ignored the young artist and turned back to Ghost. You came here looking for routes. I came looking for the people who tried to buy my label with dirty money. Looks like we both found the same problem. Ghost pulled a chair out and sat. Rafael Cruz. Streetlit's jaw tightened. He sat in this room 6 weeks ago, Offered me unlimited financing through 3 shell companies tied to entertainment marketing. Said the money was clean. I told him I wanted 30 days to look under the hood. What did you find? Enough to know the money wasn't coming from music. It was coming from the same places that got your man killed in Philly. Rel stopped pacing. So why didn't you call us? Because I don't know you, Streetlit said. I know what the streets say about you. That's not the same thing. Ghost respected the honesty. Outside the glass wall, young artists kept moving like nothing had changed. Engineers still mixed. Editors still cut videos. The machine kept turning because Streetlit had built something that looked legitimate enough to survive the first storm. Ghost knew better. Storms like this didn't stop at the first building. They kept going until everything that shared the same foundation collapsed. Pretty C spoke without looking at anyone. They're going to freeze accounts. They're going to lean on promoters. They're going to make every artist under this roof decide whether they want to be famous or free. Streetlit glanced at her. You thinking about walking? I'm thinking about surviving. OG Ball stood up. I ain't walking. I just got here. Streetlit pointed at the young man. Sit down and listen. Fame don't stop bullets. It just makes the headlines bigger when they hit. Ghost's phone vibrated once. Ava. He stepped into the hallway and answered. I'm at my sister's, she said. Maryland. You happy? Safer. T-Bone's mother called me. Ghost closed his eyes. She's asking when the body is coming home. Soon. That's not an answer, Malik. It's the only one I got right now. Ava was quiet for a long time. They're saying your name on the news with a music label in Atlanta. What the hell are you doing down there? Trying to stay ahead of the people who already decided how this ends. And Rel, Ghost looked through the glass at his oldest friend. Rel was talking low to Streetlit, hands moving, the same way he always did when he was trying to sell violence as strategy. Rel is still Rel. That's what scares me. The call ended. Ghost walked back into the room. Streetlit had pulled up a different screen, bank records, wire transfers, tour reimbursements that never happened, marketing invoices for artists who didn't exist. They're not just using the music industry, Streetlit said. They're building a parallel one. Fake labels, fake tours, fake festivals. Money moves, then disappears into real estate and political donations. Ghost studied the screen. Damon Hayes. Streetlit nodded. His uncle's PAC took $300,000 from one of these shells last quarter, perfectly legal on paper. Rel leaned over the table. So we hit him. Ghost looked at him. In Washington? Wherever he is. Streetlit shook his head. You walk into D.C. right now and you'll never walk out. They already have your face on every federal screen from here to New York. Pretty C pushed off the wall. There's another way. Everyone looked at her. They use the industry to move money. We use the industry to move information. Streetlit understood first. You want to bait them. I want to make them come to us, she said. On our ground, with cameras rolling and lawyers watching. Ghost studied her. You willing to put your name next to that? Pretty C didn't blink. My name already got put next to it the second Brooks said renegade on national television. Might as well choose how the story ends. OG Ball raised his hand like he was still in school. What about me? Streetlit answered without looking at him. You stay in the studio and keep your mouth shut. That's your job right now. The young artist sat back down, jaw tight. Ghost looked at the map of the United States still glowing on the wall. New York, Philadelphia, Washington, Atlanta, 4 cities, 4 different kinds of power, one invisible hand trying to own all of them. He turned to Streetlit. I need 2 things. Name them. A clean place to sleep that isn't connected to this building, and a way to talk to Isaiah Graves without phones. Streetlit almost smiled. You and the Philly man still talking after what happened? We have a common enemy now. That's how most temporary alliances start, Streetlit said, and how most of them end. Rel stepped closer to Ghost. You trust in graves more than you trust me? The room went quiet. Ghost met his eyes. I'm trusting the man who didn't put a bullet in T-Bone. Rel's face didn't move, but something behind his eyes closed. Streetlit broke the silence. There's a loft 3 blocks over, owned by a company that has nothing to do with music. Keys will be waiting. Ghost nodded. We move in an hour. As they left the conference room, Pretty C caught Ghost's arm. You're not the only one they tried to buy, she said quietly. 6 months ago, a woman came to one of my shows, said she represented investors who loved my sound, wanted to put me on a national tour with money that never had to be paid back. What did she look like? Light skin, long hair, tattoo on her wrist that looked like a broken circle. Ghost felt the temperature in his chest drop. Simone, or the woman using her name. Pretty C watched his face. I told her no. 2 weeks later, my old manager's car got shot up in the parking lot of a club in Miami. He lived. Message was clear. Ghost nodded once. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, she said. If this thing comes for Renegade, I'm not going down quiet. And neither is this building. Across the city, Detective Brooks sat in a borrowed FBI conference room watching the same news conference replay on a laptop. Maria stood by the window, arms folded, staring at the Atlanta skyline like it had personally offended her. You went too far, she said. Brooks didn't look up. I said nothing that wasn't true. You put a legitimate company in the crosshairs to flush out a man you've been chasing for 6 years. I put pressure where pressure belongs. Maria turned. And if Streetlit's clean, then he survives. Clean people usually do. That's not how this works, and you know it. Brooks closed the laptop. Our source went dark after Philly, completely. No contact, no location, nothing. Maybe the source is dead. Or maybe the source got what they wanted and walked away. Maria's phone buzzed. She checked it, then locked the screen without answering. Brooks watched her. That him? No. You still protecting the identity. I'm protecting the case. From me? Maria walked toward the door. From everybody who thinks the ends always justify the means. She left him alone with the silence and the photograph still pinned to the board. Ghost, Rel, Raphael. And now a music label that had never asked to be in the war. Brooks rubbed his eyes. Every empire slipped. He just hadn't decided yet whose empire he was watching fall. At a private airstrip outside Atlanta, a black SUV rolled to a stop beside a waiting Gulfstream. Damon Hayes stepped out first. Simone Tate followed, wearing sunglasses and a new coat. Raphael Cruz stayed in the vehicle until both of them were inside the plane. Damon loosened his tie and looked at Simone. Ghost is in Atlanta. I know. He's talking to Streetlit. I know that too. Damon smiled without warmth. Then you also know what happens next. Simone removed her sunglasses. The tattoo on her wrist caught the cabin light. A small broken circle, freshly inked. I make sure Rel believes Ghost is cutting him out, she said. And I make sure Ghost believes Rel already sold him. Raphael finally boarded. And if they figure out the game? Damon poured himself a drink. Then we let the federal investigation finish what we started. He raised the glass toward the window as the plane began to taxi. Either way, one of them wears the crown. And the other one, Simone said, gets the grave. The jet lifted off, banking north, toward Washington, toward the final board. Chapter 7, Broken Circle. The loft Streetlit arranged sat above an old print shop that hadn't printed anything in years. Thick walls, thick doors, no cameras on the block that anyone could find. Ghost stood at the window watching the street, while Rel cleaned a pistol at the kitchen table like it was the only thing in the world that still made sense. 2 of their men, Sean, Lil Saint, was still in New York under watch, sat in the other room with the television on mute. Ghost spoke without turning. You gonna say it or keep letting it eat you? Rel racked the slide. You chose Graves over me in that school. I chose information. You left me at the hotel. I left you alive. Rel set the gun down harder than necessary. T-Bone died because you trusted the wrong people. Ghost finally turned. T-Bone died because somebody inside our own house gave them enough to follow us. Lil Saint was the messenger. Somebody else wrote the message. And you still don't think it could be me? I think if it was you, T-Bone would have said your name instead of defending it with his last breath. The words hung between them. Rel looked away first. You really believe that? I have to. Otherwise, everything we built was already dead before we left Harlem. Silence stretched. Then Rel stood and walked to the refrigerator like the conversation was finished. He pulled out a bottle of water, drank half of it, and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. What's the play with the music people? We use their light to see who else is moving in the dark. Rel almost smiled. That sounds like something OG would say. OG said a lot of things that kept us breathing. Ghost's phone, the clean one Streetlit had given him, buzzed once. A single message from an unknown Atlanta number. Isaiah Graves is in the city. Same rules. No phones. Warehouse off Murphy Avenue. 1 hour. Ghost showed Rel the screen. Rel read it twice. Could be another setup. Could be. We going? Ghost already reached for his coat. We go. We listen. We leave if it smells wrong. Rel picked up the pistol and slid it into the holster under his shirt. This time, I'll walk in with you. Ghost didn't argue. Some cracks could still be walked back, some could not. They would find out which kind this one was before the night was over. The warehouse on Murphy Avenue used to store textiles. Now it stored silence and old dust. Isaiah Graves waited alone near a stack of empty pallets. Philly's cap pulled low, hands visible. No men behind him this time. Ghost and Rel entered from opposite sides of the same door. Isaiah watched them both. You look like men who haven't slept since the school. Ghost stopped 10 feet away. T-Bone's body still in Philly? My people moved him. His family will have him by morning. Ghost nodded once. That was enough for now. Isaiah looked at Rel. You still want to kill me? Rel's answer was flat. Depends on the next 5 minutes. Isaiah almost smiled. Honest. I can work with honest. He pulled a folded photograph from his pocket and tossed it onto a crate between them. Ghost picked it up. Simone Tate standing beside Damon Hayes outside a private terminal in Virginia. Time stamped 12 hours after the school shooting. Alive, smiling. Wearing the same coat she had on in the nightclub picture with Malik. Rel's face went hard. She played both sides. She played every side, Isaiah said, including mine, including yours, including the boy who got T-Bone killed. Ghost stared at the photo. Where is she now? Washington, with Hayes and Rafael Cruz. Rel stepped closer. Then we go get them. Isaiah shook his head. You walk into that city right now and you'll be in federal custody before you clear the airport. Brooks already has your faces on every screen. The music label just made it worse. Ghost folded the photograph. What do you want, Isaiah? The same thing you want? The people who used both of us to start a war we never asked for. And after that? Isaiah met his eyes. After that, we go back to staying out of each other's cities. Or we don't. But at least the board will be clean. Rel laughed without humor. You trust this? Ghost answered before Isaiah could. I trust the enemy of my enemy until the bodies stop dropping. Isaiah nodded. There's one more thing. He handed Ghost a second photograph. This one was older, a younger Rafael Cruz, standing with a man Ghost had never seen. White, government haircut, expensive suit, flag pin on the lapel. Who is he? Ghost asked. Former DOJ, now private consulting, the kind of consulting that never shows up on a public ledger. He's the one who introduced Damon Hayes to the money pipeline 3 years ago. Ghost studied the face. Name? Richard Langford. Rel looked at Ghost. That means something to you? Ghost didn't answer right away, because the name did mean something. 7 years ago, when his mother was still alive and the circle was still just a handful of hungry kids, a man named Langford had offered Ghost a deal through a lawyer. Clean money, quiet exit. All he had to do was give up every name he knew. Ghost had said no. 2 months later, his mother was dead in a car that shouldn't have left the curb. He had never been able to prove the connection until now. Ghost slipped both photographs into his coat. We move on Langford. Isaiah raised an eyebrow. That's federal territory. Everything is federal territory now. Rel watched Ghost's face carefully. You know him. Ghost looked at his oldest friend. I know enough. Outside, a car door closed too carefully. Isaiah's hand drifted toward his waist. You bring company? Ghost and Rel both turned. 3 black SUVs had blocked the only open exit from the warehouse lot. No lights, no sirens. Men in dark jackets stepped out with the calm of people who had done this before. Federal, or something that wanted to look federal. Ghost's voice stayed low. Isaiah, side door. Isaiah was already moving. Rel drew first. The first shot came from the lead SUV and sparked off the concrete near Ghost's feet. Then the warehouse became a different kind of music. And somewhere in the dark between Atlanta and Washington, the people who had started this war smiled because the circle was finally bleeding in public. Midnight Kings, Chapter 8, Smoke and Mirrors. The first volley turned the warehouse into a slaughterhouse of echoes. Ghost hit the concrete behind a stack of pallets as rounds chewed through the metal siding. Rel fired twice from a low crouch, the suppressed shots snapping like wet wood. Isaiah was already moving for the side door. Philly's cap gone, weapon in hand. 2 on the left, Rel barked. Ghost saw them, dark jackets, tactical posture, not local police, not street. These men moved like they had practiced clearing rooms for a living. A third shooter appeared on the catwalk above the loading bay. Ghost put 2 rounds into the railing near the man's feet. The shooter dropped flat. Isaiah kicked the side door open. Night air rushed in, thick with diesel and rain. Move! They spilled into the alley behind the warehouse. A black sedan sat idling with its lights off. Isaiah's man. The driver didn't wait for introductions. The moment the rear door slammed, the car shot forward, tires screaming on wet asphalt. Behind them, the warehouse lot lit up with muzzle flashes and the sound of boots on concrete. Rel twisted in the seat, watching the side mirror. They weren't trying to arrest us. Ghost reloaded by feel. No, Isaiah's voice was calm, almost clinical. Langford's people don't arrest. They erase. The sedan cut through side streets, then onto a surface road that fed toward the interstate. No one spoke for 3 full minutes. Ghost's clean phone vibrated once. Streetlit. He answered on speaker. You're on the news again, Streetlit said. Warehouse shooting, multiple shooters, no bodies recovered yet. Atlanta PD and feds are both claiming jurisdiction. Ghost stared out the window at the dark warehouses sliding past. We need a place that isn't yours. Already handled. There's a safe house in East Point. Keys under the mat. Cameras are offline. Stay off the main roads. Rel leaned toward the phone. You got eyes on Pretty C? She's in the studio with 3 of my people. Nobody gets near her without going through me. The call ended. Isaiah looked at Ghost in the rear view. Your music friend just became a target. He already was. The safe house was a small brick bungalow with bars on the windows and a backyard that backed up to a drainage ditch. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old carpet. Ghost checked every room while Rel covered the front. Isaiah stood in the kitchen with the lights off, watching the street through a crack in the blinds. When the house was clear, Ghost finally spoke. Langford. Isaiah nodded. Richard Langford, former DOJ, left after a quiet investigation into missing asset forfeiture funds. Now he consults for people who need problems to disappear without paperwork. Rel sat on the arm of a stained couch. And Damon Hayes? The public face? Langford is the architect. Ghost pulled the old photograph from his coat, the one of a younger Raphael standing with Langford. 7 years ago, this man tried to buy me out of the streets, offered clean money and a quiet life. All I had to do was give up every name I knew. Isaiah's eyes narrowed. You said no. 2 months later, my mother died in a car that shouldn't have moved. Silence filled the room. Rel looked at Ghost like he was seeing a different man. You never told me that. There was nothing to tell. I couldn't prove it. And now? Ghost folded the photograph. Now I don't need proof. I need him in the same room. Isaiah checked his watch. Getting to Langford means going through Damon. Damon stays close to the Capitol. Heavy security. Political cover. Rel stood. Then we take the cover away. Ghost met his eyes. How? Public. Real public. Something he can't bury? Isaiah almost smiled. You're talking about using the same weapon they used on Streetlit. I'm talking about turning their light against them. Ghost walked to the window. Rain had started again, soft and steady. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn rolled across the city. He thought of Ava in Maryland, of T-Bone's body finally heading home, of Lil Saint sitting under watch in Harlem, still crying about a woman with a tattoo who had never been real. The circle was bleeding, but bleeding wasn't the same as dead. Not yet. Detective Brooks landed in Atlanta at 11:47 p.m. Maria was already waiting at the rental counter with 2 coffees and a face that said she hadn't slept either. Warehouse is locked down, she said. No bodies. Shell casings from at least 4 different weapons. Local PD found a Phillies cap in the alley. Brooks took the coffee. Isaiah Graves. Looks that way. They drove in silence until the city lights thickened. Maria finally spoke. Our source made contact 20 minutes ago. Brooks kept his eyes on the road and said Ghost and Rel are still together, said they're meeting with Graves, said the real target is a man named Langford. Brooks glanced at her. Richard Langford? You know him? I know of him. The kind of man who never leaves fingerprints. Maria's voice dropped. Source also said Simone Tate is alive and in Washington with Damon Hayes. Brooks pulled into a motel parking lot and killed the engine. Your source is feeding us just enough to keep us moving in the direction someone else wants. Maria didn't argue. She stared at the dashboard. What if the source isn't trying to help the investigation? Then what are they doing? Choosing which king survives. Brooks looked at her for a long time. You still won't give me the name. Not yet. When? Maria opened the door. When I'm sure the name won't get us both killed. She stepped out into the rain. Brooks sat alone with the engine ticking and the growing certainty that the case had stopped being about Ghost a long time ago. It was about who got to write the ending. At a private residence in Northwest Washington, Damon Hayes poured 2 drinks while Simone watched the muted news footage of the Atlanta warehouse. Raphael stood by the fireplace, phone in hand. They escaped, Raphael said. Damon handed Simone a glass. Of course they did. Ghost doesn't die easy. That's why he's useful. Simone took a slow sip. Rel is the unstable one. Push him harder. Damon smiled. That's your job. She set the glass down. I've already planted the seed that Ghost is cutting him out of the Atlanta deal. Next message will say Ghost offered Isaiah a seat at the table and left Rel in the cold. Raphael looked up. And if Rel believes it, then one of them kills the other before they ever reach Langford. Damon walked to the window overlooking the dark streets. Langford wants this finished clean. No federal martyrs, no political blowback. Simone joined him. Langford wants whatever keeps his name off the paper. Outside, a black government sedan rolled slowly past the house and continued down the block. Damon's smile faded. They're watching, he said. Raphael's voice was quiet. They've been watching. The difference is now they think they understand the board. Damon turned. Then we changed the board again. He looked at Simone. Send the next message to Rel. Make it personal. Simone already had the phone in her hand. Chapter 9. Brothers of the Same Storm. The safe house stayed dark. Ghost sat at the kitchen table with a city map and 3 phones that couldn't be traced back to him. Isaiah had gone to make contact with his remaining people in Philly. Rel stood at the front window, watching the empty street like it might grow teeth. The message arrived at 2:14 a.m., unknown number. 6 words. Ghost offered Isaiah your seat. Rel read it twice, then a third time. His thumb hovered over the screen. Ghost watched him from the table. You going to tell me what it says, or keep letting it work? Rel turned the phone so Ghost could see. The kitchen went still. Ghost didn't look surprised. He looked tired. They're good at this. You saying it's fake? I'm saying it's exactly what they want you to believe. Rel's voice dropped. You met with Graves alone in Philly. You brought him into the Atlanta meeting. You left me at the hotel the night T-Bone died. I left you alive. You keep saying that like it fixes the rest. Ghost stood. The chair scraped loud in the quiet house. You want the truth? I don't know who to trust. Not fully, not anymore. That includes you. That includes Isaiah. That includes the man who just gave us this roof. The only thing I know is that somebody wants us to put bullets in each other so they don't have to. Rel's jaw worked. And if I decide I don't believe you? Ghost met his eyes without blinking. Then we finish it right here. No more messages. No more ghosts in the dark. Just you and me like when we were kids and the only thing that mattered was who walked away. The silence that followed was heavier than any gun. Rel's hand stayed near his waist. Then, slowly, he set the phone on the counter. I'm not putting a bullet in you, he said. Not tonight. Ghost nodded once. Good, because we're going to need both of us to reach Langford. Isaiah returned 20 minutes later with rain on his shoulders and a new piece of information. Langford is in Washington for the next 48 hours. Private fundraiser tomorrow night. Closed list, heavy security. Damon will be there. Simone, too. Rel folded his arms. How do we get in? Isaiah looked at Ghost. We don't. Not as ourselves. Ghost understood. We need someone who already belongs in that room. The 3 men stood in the dark kitchen, the same thought settling over them at once. Streetlit, or someone close enough to streetlit that the invitation would not raise alarms. Ghost picked up the clean phone. Streetlit answered on the first ring. I need a favor that could burn everything you built, Ghost said. On the other end of the line, Streetlit was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, tell me the address. Outside, the rain kept falling on Atlanta like the city itself was trying to wash something clean. It wouldn't be enough. Some stains only came out with blood. Midnight Kings. Chapter 10. The Invitation. Streetlit arrived at the East Point safe house just after sunrise, driving a plain gray sedan that looked like it belonged to a man who paid his taxes on time. He came alone. No security, no entourage. Just a black folder under one arm and the same calm expression he had worn the first time Ghost met him. He set the folder on the kitchen table. There's a fundraiser tomorrow night at a private residence in Calorama. Langford is the quiet guest of honor. Damon Hayes is listed as a co-host. The guest list is political money, defense contractors, and 3 entertainment executives who think proximity to power is the same as power. Ghost opened the folder, invitations, names, security notes, a floor plan. Rel leaned over his shoulder. How the hell did you get this? Streetlit looked at him. One of those entertainment executives owes Renegade Music a favor he can't afford to have called in public. I called it in private. Isaiah stood near the window, arms crossed. You're putting your whole company on the line. My company was already on the line the moment Brooks said my name on television, Streetlit said. This just decides whether I go down as a victim or as a man who chose his side. Ghost studied the floor plan. Main floor. Second floor private rooms, limited exits. Private security plus at least 2 off-duty federal faces in the mix. We can't walk in as ourselves, Ghost said. Streetlit nodded. You won't. There's a production company flying in from Atlanta tomorrow morning to document the event for a future documentary on political philanthropy. 3 camera positions, 2 production assistants, 1 sound tech. The credentials are already printed. Rel almost smiled. You're putting us on the crew. I'm putting 2 of you on the crew, Streetlit corrected. Ghost and Isaiah. Rel stays outside the perimeter with an exit plan. If anything goes wrong, someone has to still be free to move. Rel's face hardened. You keeping me on the outside again? Ghost looked at him. This time it's strategy, not distrust. Feels the same from where I'm standing. Streetlit closed the folder. There's one more piece. Pretty C is performing a short acoustic set at the fundraiser, invitation only. She insisted. Ghost's head snapped up. You let her? I couldn't stop her. She said if the people who tried to buy her silence are going to be in the same room, she wants to look them in the eye while she sings. Isaiah shook his head. That's reckless. That's Pretty C, Streetlit said. She doesn't do quiet. Ghost stared at the floor plan again. The pieces were moving faster than he liked. Every new ally came with a new risk. Every open door could be another trap. But the alternative was waiting for Langford to finish the job from a distance. He looked at Rel. You take the exterior. 2 cars, clean plates. If we don't walk out by midnight, you don't come in after us. You burn everything and disappear. Rel held his gaze for a long second. And if I decide midnight is too late, then you do what you've always done, Ghost said. You choose survival. The room went quiet. Streetlit checked his watch. Wheels up in 4 hours. Private flight. No passenger list that connects to any of you. Once we're in the air, there's no turning back. Ghost closed the folder. There hasn't been a turning back since T-Bone hit the floor. Detective Brooks stood in the borrowed Atlanta field office watching live feeds from 3 different cameras trained on renegade music. Maria sat across from him with a legal pad full of names she kept crossing out. Streetlit left the building at 5:42 a.m., she said. Alone, gray sedan. No tail that we could hold without lighting up the whole surveillance net. Brooks rubbed his temples. He's in it now, or he's trying to get out of it clean. There's no clean left in this case. Maria's phone buzzed. She read the message, then locked the screen. Brooks watched her. Source again? Yes. What now? Says Ghost is leaving Atlanta today. Destination Washington. Says the target is a private fundraiser tomorrow night. Brooks sat forward. Langford. Maria didn't confirm. She didn't deny. Brooks stood and walked to the window. Atlanta stretched out under a gray morning sky that looked like it had never seen sun. Your source is always one step ahead of us, he said. Always just helpful enough to keep us moving, never helpful enough to end it. Maria's voice was quiet. Maybe the source doesn't want it to end the way we do. Brooks turned. Then what does the source want? Maria looked at the legal pad, at the name she had crossed out, at the one name she had never written down. I think the source wants one specific man to walk away when the smoke clears. Brooks studied her face. And you're still not ready to tell me who that man is? I'm ready, she said. I'm just not sure you are. The silence between them had teeth now. Somewhere in the building, a printer started spitting paper. Somewhere outside, a siren rose and fell. Brooks picked up his jacket. We're going to Washington. Maria stood. I already booked the flight. In a quiet townhouse in Calorama, Richard Langford sat in a leather chair with a cup of black coffee and a single sheet of paper. Damon Hayes stood near the fireplace. Simone sat on the arm of the opposite chair. Raphael leaned against the wall like a man who had learned long ago never to sit when powerful people were speaking. Langford didn't look up from the paper. "Ghost is coming here?" Damon nodded. "We expected that. He's bringing help." Simone spoke. "Street lit. Possibly the Philly man. Possibly the girl who sings." Langford finally raised his eyes. They were pale and empty of anything that could be called warmth. "Then the fundraiser becomes the end of the board." Raphael shifted. "You want them taken inside the house?" "I want them taken in a way that leaves no political residue, no bodies on the front steps, no cameras that survive. If Ghost dies, he dies as a criminal who brought violence into a room full of donors. If he lives long enough to watch everything he built burn in public." Damon smiled. "And Rel." Langford's voice was soft. "Rel is the weapon we already sharpened. Let him believe Ghost sold him one more time. Men like Rel don't need much to pull a trigger on the only brother they have left." Simone stood. "I'll send the next message when they're in the air." Langford returned to his paper. "Do it carefully. We only get one clean ending." Outside, the morning traffic of Washington moved like nothing in the world was about to break. Chapter 11. Wheels Up. The private jet left Atlanta under a name that belonged to a production company no one had ever heard of. Ghost sat in the rear-facing seat with the city disappearing beneath the wing. Isaiah sat across from him, eyes closed, hands folded. Streetlit worked on a laptop 2 seats forward, typing like a man rewriting the terms of his own survival. Rel was not on the plane. He had left an hour earlier in a different car with 2 of Streetlit's most trusted people and a different flight plan. He would be on the ground in Virginia before the jet even began its descent. Ghost watched the clouds. He thought of the message Rel had received in the safe house. The same cold precision, the same attempt to put a knife between them. He wondered how many more of those messages it would take before one of them finally believed the lie. Streetlit closed the laptop and turned. "Credentials are clean. You'll be listed as production assistants under names that trace back to a shell I control. Pretty Sea lands 2 hours after us. Separate flight, separate security." Isaiah opened his eyes. "And if Langford already knows?" Streetlit's answer was flat. "Then we find out how good his people really are." Ghost looked at both men. "Once we're inside that house, the only exit that matters is the one we create. No heroics, no speeches. We identify Langford, confirm Damon and Simone, and get out with proof if we can. If we can't, we get out alive." Isaiah nodded. Streetlit didn't. He just stared at the clouds like a man calculating the cost of every mile. The plane leveled off. Somewhere below them, Rel's car was already moving through Virginia back roads toward the city that had decided it wanted a new king. Ghost closed his eyes for the first time in 2 days. He did not sleep. He only waited for the ground to come back up and meet them. Rel received the next message while the jet was still in the air. "Unknown number. Ghost is cutting you out of the Washington move. Isaiah takes your place at the table. Your exterior security, disposable." Rel read it in the back seat of the car while Streetlit's men sat silent in the front. He didn't answer the message. He didn't delete it either. He just stared at the words until the screen went dark, then looked out at the gray Virginia landscape sliding past the window. For the first time since they were 10 years old, Rel allowed himself to wonder whether the brother he had built an empire with still saw him as a brother at all, or only as a problem that had not yet been solved. The car kept moving toward Washington, and the storm that had started in Harlem finally had a clear destination. Midnight Kings. Chapter 12. Ground Game. Washington received them the way it received most dangerous things, quietly, behind tinted glass and polite security. The jet touched down at a private terminal in Virginia. No customs questions, no names spoken louder than necessary. A black Sprinter van waited with production logos already magnetized to the doors. Ghost and Isaiah climbed in the back. Streetlit took the front passenger seat and didn't look back at the runway. Rel's car was already inside the city. Ghost felt the distance between them like a physical thing. The safe apartment streetlit arranged sat in a quiet stretch of northeast. 2 bedrooms, blackout curtains, and a kitchen that smelled like it had never been used. On the table waited 3 laminated credentials, 2 earpieces, and a single printed schedule for the fundraiser. Ghost picked up his credential. The name on it belonged to a man who had never existed. Isaiah examined his own. These people really believe cameras make them invisible. Streetlit set a small case on the counter. Cameras make them careful. Careful people still bleed. They just do it slower. Ghost walked to the window and looked out at the gray afternoon. Where's Rel? In position near Kalorama, 2 blocks out. He has the secondary vehicle and a clean route south if everything collapses. Ghost nodded, but the nod felt incomplete. He pulled the clean phone and typed a single message to Rel. We're on the ground. Stick to the plan. The reply came 30 seconds later. Copy. No more, no less. Ghost stared at the screen longer than he needed to. Isaiah watched him. You two still solid? We're still breathing in the same war, Ghost said. That's as solid as it gets right now. Streetlit checked his watch. Pretty C lands in 90 minutes. I want her in a different location until it's time to move. The less time she spends near either of you, the better. Ghost turned from the window. She knows the risk. She knew the risk the day she told that woman with the tattoo to keep her money. Isaiah leaned against the counter. Langford will have people inside who don't look like security. Donors, staff, maybe even one of the other production faces. Ghost already understood. We don't trust the room. We trust the exit. Streetlit closed the case. There's one more thing. Damon Hayes requested a private meet and greet with Pretty C after her set. 10 minutes. Closed door. 2nd floor. The temperature in the apartment dropped. Ghost's voice stayed level. That's not a meet and greet? No, Streetlit said. It's a test, or a trap, or both. Isaiah looked at Ghost. You still want to walk into that house? Ghost picked up the credential again and slid it into his pocket. I want Langford to see the face of the man he tried to buy 7 years ago. After that, we decide who walks out. Rel sat in a parked sedan 2 blocks from the Kalorama residence. Engine off, windows cracked just enough to hear the street. Streetlit's 2 men waited in a second car half a block behind him. The message from the unknown number had arrived 20 minutes earlier. Ghost told Streetlit you're a liability. They're using you as exterior cover so they can move without you. When the night ends, you won't be at the table. Rel read it one more time, then locked the phone and set it face down on the passenger seat. He had known Ghost since they were boys stealing chips from the corner store and running from the same police. He had watched Ghost become the quiet one, the thinker, the man who spoke last and decided first. Rel had been the fire. Ghost had been the hand that aimed it. Now the hand felt like it was aiming somewhere else. One of Streetlit's men knocked once on the window. Rel lowered it. We're set. 2 exits mapped. If they come out hot, we can be gone in under a minute. Rel nodded. Stay ready. The man walked back to the other car. Rel stared at the quiet, expensive street. Brick houses, American flags. The kind of block where violence was supposed to be something that happened to other people in other zip codes. He thought of T-Bone on the classroom floor. He thought of the way Ghost had looked at him in the Philadelphia garage when the words, "So could you," slipped out. He thought of every time he had been told to wait, to hold, to trust the plan. The phone stayed face down, but the seed was already in the ground. Detective Brooks and Maria landed at Reagan National under gray skies that matched the ones they had left in Atlanta. A local FBI liaison met them with a black Suburban and a folder that was thinner than Brooks liked. Langford is protected, the liaison said. Not officially, but enough people owe him favors that any open surveillance on that fundraiser will get shut down before it starts. Brooks took the folder. Then we don't do open. Maria rode in the back seat, staring at her phone. The source had gone quiet again after the last tip. That silence felt louder than the messages. Brooks glanced at her in the mirror. You still think your source is choosing sides. I think my source already chose. And you're still protecting the name. Maria looked up. If I give you the name right now, and the name is wrong, we lose the only window we have. If the name is right, we might both end up on the wrong side of people who don't leave witnesses. Brooks turned back to the road. I've been on the wrong side of those people for 6 years. I'm still here. For now, Maria said. The Suburban merged into the late afternoon traffic that fed toward the heart of the city. Somewhere ahead of them, a fundraiser was being prepared in a quiet Kalorama home. Somewhere in that home, a man named Richard Langford was waiting for the final pieces to arrive. And somewhere between the airport and that house, the last clean lines of the investigation were about to disappear. Chapter 13. The Room. Night settled over Kalorama like a held breath. The residents glowed from the inside. Valets moved expensive cars with practiced silence. Men in dark suits checked names against tablets. Women in understated jewelry laughed the soft, careful laugh of people who never raised their voices in public. Ghost stepped out of the production van wearing black jeans, a charcoal work shirt, and a credential that hung around his neck like a lie that had learned how to smile. Isaiah followed 2 steps behind, carrying a small equipment case that held nothing more dangerous than cables and a backup hard drive. Streetlit was already inside, speaking with a woman who handled event logistics for the host committee. Pretty C would arrive in 40 minutes through a side entrance reserved for talent. Ghost kept his head down and his eyes open. The main floor was open plan, living room converted to a reception space, dining room set with high-top tables, a temporary stage near the rear windows where Pretty C would perform. Security was visible but not aggressive. 2 men at the front, 1 near the kitchen, another roaming. The real danger would not wear earpieces, it would wear cufflinks and donor pins. Isaiah's voice came low through the shared earpiece Streetlit had provided. Second floor staircase is left of the main hallway. Private rooms are marked for host use only. Ghost adjusted a light stand that didn't need adjusting. Damon's meet with Pretty C is scheduled for 10 minutes after her set, 2nd floor, east room. And Langford? Not confirmed on the floor yet. He'll wait until the room is full and the cameras are pointed the right direction. Streetlit passed them without looking, speaking into a phone about lighting cues that didn't matter. As he passed, he murmured, Raphael is near the bar. Simone is with the host's wife. Damon just arrived through the rear. Ghost felt the old familiar stillness settle in his chest. The same stillness that came before every major decision. The same stillness that had kept him alive when other men reached for their guns too early. He moved through the room like a man who belonged there, carrying nothing but a clipboard and the weight of 7 years. Outside, 2 blocks away, Rel sat in the dark car and watched the valets work. His phone lit up one more time. Unknown number. They're already inside. Ghost and Isaiah. You're still outside. Ask yourself why. Rel didn't answer. He only stared at the glowing windows of the house and wondered how many more messages it would take before the fire he had always carried finally decided which direction to burn. Midnight Kings. Chapter 14. Acoustic. Pretty C walked into the Kalorama residence like she had been born in rooms that cost more than most people would see in a lifetime. Black dress, minimal jewelry, no smile for the cameras that weren't supposed to be rolling yet. She moved through the donors and the political wives with the same calm she used on stage, eyes forward, shoulders loose, voice saved for when it mattered. Streetlit met her near the temporary stage and spoke close to her ear. Whatever he said made her nod once. Then she stepped onto the small platform, accepted the acoustic guitar from a stagehand, and sat on the stool like the room belonged to her. Ghost watched from the far side of the living room, clipboard in hand, credential visible. Isaiah stood near the hallway that led to the 2nd floor stairs, pretending to check a cable run. The first chord cut through the soft conversation. Pretty C didn't introduce herself. She didn't thank anyone for having her. She just sang. The song was slow, precise, and mean in the way only truth can be mean. It was about men who bought silence and called it investment, about rooms that smiled while they planned funerals, about the difference between a crown and a target. Ghost felt the shift in the air. Some of the donors looked uncomfortable. A few smiled the way people smile when they think art is decorative. Damon Hayes stood near the rear windows with a glass in his hand and watched her like a man studying a problem that had learned how to sing. Simone was closer to the front, elegant, composed, the broken circle tattoo hidden under a long sleeve. Langford had not yet appeared on the main floor. When the last note faded, the applause was polite and carefully measured. Pretty C stood, handed the guitar back, and walked off the stage without lingering. Damon was already moving toward her. Streetlit intercepted them with a practiced smile and the easy body language of a man who belonged in both worlds. He guided the short conversation, then gestured toward the stairs. The private 10 minutes. Ghost's earpiece crackled, Streetlit's voice low. "They're going up. East room, 2 minutes." Ghost glanced at Isaiah. Isaiah gave the smallest nod and began drifting toward the hallway. Outside, Rel watched the house from the dark car. He had seen Pretty C arrive. He had seen the way the security tightened for a moment when she stepped inside. Now the windows on the second floor glowed warmer. His phone lit up again. Final message from the unknown number. "He's upstairs with Damon and the girl. You're still sitting in the car. This is what disposable looks like." Rel's hand closed around the phone hard enough to make the case creak. One of Streetlit's men spoke from the other car over the short-range radio. "Still quiet out here. No movement." Rel didn't answer. He was tired of quiet. Upstairs, the east room was smaller than Ghost expected. Bookshelves, a writing desk, 2 armchairs, a single window that looked down on the side garden. Damon closed the door behind Pretty C and Streetlit. Simone entered a moment later and leaned against the wall, like she had been invited to a different kind of meeting. Damon's smile was polished. That was a powerful performance, dangerous even. Pretty C didn't sit. "I don't sing for people who need to be protected from the truth." Damon chuckled. "And yet, here you are." Streetlit kept his voice light. "She's here because the host committee asked for her. I'm here because I protect my artists." Simone's eyes moved between them. Protection is an interesting word these days. Down the hallway, Ghost and Isaiah reached the second-floor landing. A single security man stood near the top of the stairs, more decorative than dangerous. Ghost flashed the credential and muttered something about a lighting check for the private rooms. The man barely looked at them. They moved past. Ghost stopped outside the east room door and listened. Inside, Damon's voice continued. "There's a future where renegade music becomes something larger than Atlanta. National distribution, political access, real protection. All it requires is the right partnerships." Pretty C's answer was cold. "I already met one of your partnerships. She had a tattoo on her wrist and a habit of making people disappear." The room went still. Simone's voice soft. "Careful." Streetlit stepped in. "We're not here to negotiate. We're here because you requested 10 minutes. You've had 3. The rest can wait." Damon's smile thinned. "I was hoping for a more productive conversation." Ghost looked at Isaiah. Isaiah's hand was already near the small of his back where the compact pistol sat under the work shirt. Ghost raised 2 fingers. "Wait." They needed Langford, not just the public face. The door opened from the inside. Streetlit stepped out first, Pretty C half a step behind him. Damon followed, still smiling for anyone who might be watching. Simone came last. Ghost turned slightly, clipboard raised, the picture of a production assistant who had lost his place on the schedule. Damon's eyes passed over him without recognition. Then Simone's eyes landed on Ghost's face and stayed there a half-second too long. She knew. Ghost felt it land in his chest like a cold stone. Simone's expression didn't change. She simply continued down the hallway after Damon as if nothing had happened. But the clock had started. Isaiah's voice in the earpiece was barely a breath. "She made you." Ghost kept walking in the opposite direction toward the back stairs that led down to the service area. Then we moved faster. On the main floor, Richard Langford finally appeared. He entered through a side door reserved for the host's private guests. A tall man in a navy suit with the kind of face that disappeared in photographs. No pen, no loud jewelry. Just the quiet gravity of a man who had never needed to raise his voice to end careers. He shook 3 hands, accepted a glass of something clear, and took a position near the rear of the room where he could see both the stairs and the front entrance. Ghost saw him from the service hallway and felt 7 years collapse into a single moment. The man who had offered him a clean exit. The man whose shadow had fallen across his mother's last day. Langford lifted the glass and drank like a man with all the time in the world. Ghost's earpiece came alive with Streetlet's voice. "Langford is on the floor. Rear windows. We need to leave. Simone made you." Ghost didn't answer immediately. He watched Langford for 3 more seconds. Then he turned toward the service exit where Isaiah was already waiting. Outside, Rel started the engine of the sedan. The radio in his ear stayed quiet, but the fire that had been waiting for a direction finally found one. Chapter 15. The Break. The service exit spat Ghost and Isaiah into a narrow side alley that smelled of wet brick and garbage. Streetlit and Pretty C were already moving toward the secondary vehicle parked half a block down. The plan had been clean. Identify, confirm, extract. No contact, no noise. Simone had ruined the clean part. Ghost's phone, the clean one, vibrated as they reached the corner. A message from Rel. "Something's wrong." Moving closer, Ghost typed back fast. "Stay on the perimeter." "We're coming out." No reply. Isaiah scanned the alley mouth. "He's not going to stay." "I know." They reached the secondary vehicle. Streetlit already had the engine running. Pretty C sat in the back with her jaw set and her eyes bright with the kind of anger that didn't need volume. Ghost climbed in. "Simone made my face." "Langford is on the main floor. We have confirmation on all 3. Streetlit pulled into the street with calm hands. "Then we disappear before they decide how public they want this." The first sign that disappearing was no longer an option came in the form of 2 black SUVs turning onto the block from opposite directions. Not valets, not donors. Isaiah saw them at the same time. Streetlit's voice stayed flat. "Hold on." He cut down a side street, then another, using the residential maze the way only someone who had studied the map in advance could. The SUVs followed with professional patience. Ghost's phone lit up again. "Rel, I'm at the rear. You got 2 more coming from the garden side?" Ghost looked at Streetlit. "They're boxing the block." Pretty C leaned forward. "Then stop trying to outrun them and start choosing which direction we break." Streetlit took a hard left into a narrower street that fed toward a commercial strip. For a moment, the SUVs fell back. Then Rel's voice came over the short-range radio Streetlit had given him, tight and urgent. "I've got eyes on Raphael. He's on foot moving toward the alley you just left. And Ghost. Simone is with him." Ghost closed his eyes for half a second. The trap was no longer theoretical. It was mobile, coordinated, and already inside their exit routes. Isaiah checked the pistol under his shirt. "We need a public place. Cameras, witnesses. Something they can't clean in the dark." Streetlit nodded once. "There's a hotel 3 minutes from here. Busy lobby. Overnight staff. Valet cameras." Ghost looked at the side mirror. The SUVs had found them again. "Do it." The vehicle accelerated. Behind them, in the dark between the expensive houses in the approaching federal city, Rel made a decision of his own. He left the perimeter. He left the plan. And he drove straight toward the one person he still wasn't sure he could trust. Or kill. Midnight Kings. Chapter 16. Public Record. The hotel lobby was still busy enough to matter. Overnight guests checked in. A bartender wiped glasses in the attached lounge. Valet lights swept across the glass doors every time a car rolled up. Streetlit drove the production vehicle straight under the canopy and killed the engine like a man who had every right to be there. Ghost, Isaiah, and Pretty C stepped out as a unit. No running, no panic. Just 4 people moving with purpose toward the bright interior where cameras already watched from 3 angles. The first black SUV pulled in behind them 30 seconds later. 2 men got out. Dark suits, no visible weapons. The kind of faces that never appeared in press photos. Ghost kept walking. Inside, the lobby smelled of polished wood and coffee that had been sitting too long. Streetlit steered them toward a seating area near the elevators where the sight lines were clean and the exits still numbered more than 1. Pretty C spoke under her breath. "They're not going to shoot in here," Isaiah answered without looking at her. "They don't need to shoot. They only need to wait until we leave." Ghost's phone vibrated. "Rel, I'm on the east side of the building. Raphael and Simone are moving on foot. You've got maybe 2 minutes before they box the other exits." Ghost typed back, "Stay mobile. Do not engage." The reply was immediate. Too late for that. Ghost felt the old dread settle in his stomach. Rel had left the perimeter. The plan was already bleeding. Streetlit watched the 2 men from the SUV take positions near the front entrance. "We can't stay. They'll call in local uniforms and turn this into a detention on some manufactured charge." Ghost scanned the lobby. "Service corridor behind the front desk. Leads to the loading dock." Pretty C looked at him. "You studied the hotel." "I study every building I might have to leave in a hurry." They moved. The service corridor was narrow and lit by harsh fluorescent tubes. It smelled of bleach and cardboard. Isaiah took the lead. Ghost stayed close to Pretty C. Streetlit covered the rear. They were halfway to the loading dock when the fire door at the far end opened. Raphael Cruz stepped through first. Simone followed. Neither of them looked surprised. Raphael's voice was almost polite. "You should have stayed in Atlanta." Ghost stopped. The corridor suddenly felt much smaller. "You should have stayed out of Harlem." Simone's eyes moved across each of their faces and settled on Ghost. "Langford only needs one of you alive long enough to sign the right story. The rest are negotiable." Isaiah's hand drifted toward his waist. "You're talking a lot for people who just walked into a dead end." Raphael smiled without warmth. "Who said we're alone?" The door behind them, the one that led back to the lobby, opened again. The 2 men from the SUV stepped into the corridor and closed it quietly. 4 against 4, except only one side had come prepared to end the night in a hotel service hallway. Ghost's voice stayed low. "Pretty C, streetlit. When it starts, you go through them and don't look back." Pretty C's answer was sharp. "I'm not leaving you in a hallway." "You're leaving," Ghost said. "That's the only way any of this still matters." Raphael took 1 step forward. That was as far as he got. The loading dock door behind Raphael exploded inward. Rel came through it like the fire he had always been, pistol up, face set in the same expression Ghost had seen the night they first took a life together and decided the streets would never own them the same way again. The first shot dropped the man to Raphael's left. The corridor turned into thunder and muzzle flash. Ghost shoved Pretty C toward the loading dock and fired twice at the men coming from the lobby side. Isaiah moved with him, precise and cold. Streetlit grabbed Pretty C's arm and pulled her through the chaos toward the open night air. Simone disappeared behind a stack of laundry carts. Raphael returned fire and fell back toward the same door he had entered through. Rel kept advancing, emptying the magazine with the kind of reckless accuracy that had kept him alive for years. When the last echo died, 2 of Langford's men were down. The other 2 had retreated. Raphael and Simone were gone. Ghost's ears rang. The fluorescent lights hummed like nothing had happened. Rel stood over one of the fallen men. chest heaving, pistol still raised. Ghost walked toward him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Rel said, "You told me to stay on the perimeter. You didn't. If I had, you'd be on the floor with a story already written about how a Harlem criminal brought violence into a hotel." Ghost looked at the two bodies. "We just gave them the story anyway." Rel ejected the magazine and reloaded by feel. "Then we finish it before they finish the rewrite." Streetlit appeared at the loading dock door, Pretty C behind him, both of them breathing hard. "Police will be here in minutes. We need to move, now." Ghost looked at Rel. The crack that had been growing between them since Philadelphia was still there. But for the first time in days, it wasn't the only thing holding them together. They ran. Detective Brooks heard the call on the local tactical channel while his Suburban was still 6 blocks away. Hotel. Shots fired. Multiple victims. Possible connection to the organized crime subjects out of New York and Atlanta. Maria was already on the phone with the liaison, demanding they not lock the entire block down until she and Brooks were on scene. Brooks drove faster. He had spent 6 years chasing Malik King through shadows and careful silences. Now the shadows were bleeding in public, and the silence was over. Maria looked at him. "If Ghost is still on the scene when we arrive, then we end it," Brooks said. "One way or another." The hotel's blue lights were already painting the wet street when they turned the final corner. Chapter 17. No more messages. They abandoned the production vehicle 3 blocks from the hotel and split into 2 cars Streetlit had staged earlier in the night. Ghost rode with Rel. Isaiah took the second car with Streetlit and Pretty C. No one spoke for the first mile. Rel drove like a man who had finally stopped waiting for permission. Ghost watched the side mirrors and the quiet residential streets of Northwest Washington sliding past. Finally, Rel said, "You thought I was the leak." Ghost didn't deny it. "I thought it could be you. That was the point of the messages, to make me think it, to make you think I already decided. And now I think the only thing keeping us both alive is that we haven't given them the ending they wrote." Rel's hands tightened on the wheel. Langford! Ghost pulled the clean phone and checked for traffic cameras and police movement. The hotel was already a red zone. Every major route out of the immediate area would be watched within the next 10 minutes. He looked at Rel. "We can't go back to any of the safe locations. They're burned the moment Simone made my face." Rel nodded once. "Then we go at him tonight, while the city is still reacting to the hotel." Ghost studied his oldest friend's profile in the dashboard light. The aggression was still there. The hunger. But underneath it was something harder and more focused than the old recklessness. "You willing to follow my lead one more time?" Ghost asked. Rel glanced at him. "Depends on where you're leading." "To the only place Langford thinks is still safe." Rel almost smiled. His house. The second car pulled alongside them at a red light. Streetlit lowered the window. Pretty C sat in the back, still furious, still unbroken. Streetlit's voice was steady. "You two just became the most wanted faces in this city. Whatever you're about to do it knowing there's no version of tonight where we all walk away clean." Ghost met his eyes. Clean was never on the table. The light turned green. The 2 cars split in different directions, one toward a temporary place to leave Pretty C and Streetlit out of the final line of fire, the other toward the quiet, expensive street where Richard Langford had built a life on other people's silence. Behind them, the hotel continued to fill with uniforms and federal jackets. Somewhere in that chaos, Detective Brooks stepped under the yellow tape and began the process of turning blood and shell casings into a story the system could understand. He did not yet know that the real ending was already moving through the dark toward a different address. And for the first time in 6 years, Malik Ghost King was no longer trying to stay ahead of the hunt. He was aiming it. Midnight Kings. Chapter 18. The Quiet House. Langford's residence sat on a tree-lined street in a part of northwest Washington where the houses kept their secrets behind high hedges and discreet security lighting. No iron gates, no visible cameras that announced them, just the quiet confidence of a man who had arranged the world so that violence rarely needed to visit his doorstep. Ghost and Rel parked 2 blocks away under the canopy of an old oak and covered the rest on foot. The second car, Isaiah alone now, circled the perimeter and held position on the opposite side of the block. Street lit and Pretty C were already moving toward a different safe location, far enough from the final play that their names might still survive the morning news. Ghost checked the street one last time. No more messages, no more tests. We go in, we take what we need, and we leave him in a condition that ends the board. Rel's voice was low. Dead or exposed? Exposed first. Dead if he forces it. They moved. The side entrance Langford used for private guests was less protected than the front. A single electronic lock, a secondary deadbolt. Ghost worked both in under a minute while Rel covered the dark yard. The door opened onto a mudroom that smelled of cedar and old money. Inside, the house was silent. They cleared the first floor with the kind of patience that came from years of entering places they were not invited. Living room, dining room, study, kitchen, no staff visible. No private security walking the halls. Langford either believed the hotel chaos would keep Ghost running, or he wanted them inside. Ghost pointed up the main staircase. Rel nodded and took the left wall. They found Langford in a second-floor office that looked out over the rear garden. He sat behind a wide desk in a pool of warm lamplight, a single folder open in front of him, as if he had been expecting company and saw no reason to pretend otherwise. He did not reach for a weapon. He simply looked up and said, Malik, you're earlier than I calculated. Ghost stepped into the room. Rel stayed near the door, pistol down but ready. Langford's eyes moved to Rel and then back. And you brought the unpredictable one. Good. I always preferred dealing with complete sets. Ghost's voice was flat. 7 years ago, you offered me a way out. Then my mother died. Langford closed the folder. I offered you a transaction. You declined. What happened afterward was the natural consequence of remaining in a business that eats its own. You had her killed. I removed an obstacle that could have been used against you later. Sentiment is a liability, Malik. You of all people should understand that by now. Rel took one step forward. Ghost lifted a hand without looking back. Rel stopped. Langford watched the exchange with mild interest. The messages worked better than I expected. You spent days circling each other instead of me. That bought the necessary time. Ghost moved closer to the desk. Simone, Raphael, Damon, all of them answer to you. They answer to the structure, Langford said. I simply keep the structure from collapsing under the weight of men like you. And the music money, the fake tours, the political donations. Clean corridors for unclean capital, the same corridors every ambitious city eventually requires. You were never the point, Malik. You were a proof of concept. A mid-level operator who built something disciplined enough to be useful and arrogant enough to be predictable. Ghost felt the old stillness settle over him again. You used Mally. You used Lil Saint. You used T-Bone's death to put a crack between us. I used what the board already contained, Langford said. You and Rel were always going to break. I only chose the timing. Outside, a car door closed softly in the distance. Isaiah's voice came through the earpiece, barely a whisper. 2 vehicles just stopped at the end of the block. Not police, not yet. Ghost kept his eyes on Langford. You're out of time. Langford smiled the smallest smile. Am I? He reached under the desk with one hand, slow enough that both Ghost and Rel tracked the movement. Instead of a gun, he pressed something. A soft click sounded through the house. Magnetic locks on the exterior doors. Langford sat back. I told you, I prefer complete sets. The sound of the front door opening downstairs traveled up the staircase. Damon's voice, calm and clear. "We're in." Then Simone's. "Second floor." Rel looked at Ghost. Ghost looked at Langford. The quiet house was no longer quiet. And the final room of the board had just closed its doors. Chapter 19. Complete sets. Damon Hayes came up the stairs first, unarmed and smiling like a man arriving at a dinner party. Simone followed with a compact pistol held against her thigh. Raphael took the rear, weapon visible, eyes moving between Ghost and Rel with the caution of someone who had already seen both of them kill. Langford remained seated. "You see," he said to Ghost, "even now you hesitate. That is the difference between men who build temporary empires and men who design the systems those empires feed." Ghost's pistol was already in his hand. Rel's was aimed at Raphael. Damon stopped at the threshold of the office and raised both hands in a mock gesture of peace. "We can still write an ending that leaves some of you breathing." Ghost takes a reduced seat. Rel becomes the public face of the violence that needs a body. The circle gets absorbed instead of erased. Everyone who matters continues. Rel's laugh was short and ugly. "You talking like you still running the board." Simone's eyes flicked to Rel. "You received every message. You felt every doubt. That was not accident. That was design. The only question left is whether you finish what those messages started." Ghost stepped sideways so he had a clear angle on both Langford and Damon. "You're offering me a seat at a table I never asked to sit at." Langford folded his hands. "I'm offering you the only version of survival that does not end with your name on a federal indictment and your body in an unmarked drawer. Brooks is already at the hotel. In less than an hour, this address will be next. You can die as a cautionary tale, or you can live as a man who understood the moment to stop fighting the structure and start feeding it." Isaiah's voice came through the earpiece again, tighter now. "I've got movement on the east side of the house, at least 3. They're not coming in quiet." Ghost made the calculation in the space of a single breath. 4 hostiles in the room, unknown number outside. Isaiah alone on the perimeter. Rel still carrying days of manufactured distrust in his blood. No clean exit. He looked at Rel. For a moment, the years fell away. 10 years old, empty refrigerators, the same streets, the same promise that they would never let the city write their ending for them. Ghost's voice was barely audible. "You still with me?" Rel's answer came without hesitation. "Until the last room." That was enough. Ghost moved first. The office erupted. Langford tried to drop behind the desk. Ghost's first shot took him high in the shoulder and spun him into the bookshelf. Damon lunged sideways. Simone fired, and the round burned past Ghost's ear close enough to leave heat. Raphael and Rel exchanged shots in the doorway, muzzle flashes turning the hall into strobe. Isaiah's gun opened up outside, the sound sharp and controlled. Ghost closed the distance on Langford, kicked the desk chair aside, and put the pistol against the man's forehead while the room still rang. 7 years, Ghost said. Langford's breathing was ragged, blood spreading through the expensive shirt. "You still think this ends with me?" "It ends with you quiet." Downstairs, glass broke, more gunfire. Isaiah's voice in the earpiece cut off mid-word. Rel put Raphael down with 2 shots to the center mass and turned toward Simone. She had already shifted her aim to Ghost's exposed side. She never got the round off. Rel's bullet took her in the chest and drove her back into the wall. She slid down, eyes wide, with the same surprise Malik must have worn in that Philadelphia alley. Damon was gone, out the office door and down the secondary staircase before either of them could adjust. Ghost looked at Langford. The architect of the board was still breathing, still conscious, still trying to find the angle that would keep him alive. Ghost leaned closer. "You're going to tell Brooks everything, every shell company, every political transfer, every name, and you're going to do it on record while the blood is still wet." Langford's smile was bloody and thin. "And if I refuse?" Ghost's voice was almost gentle. Then Rel finishes what the messages started, and I let him. Outside, sirens began to rise in the distance. The system was finally arriving, but the board had already changed hands. Midnight Kings. Chapter 20. Kings don't sleep. The sirens reached the quiet street just as Ghost finished binding Langford's hands with his own belt. Blood soaked the architect's shirt and pooled on the expensive rug. But the man was still conscious, still calculating, still trying to find one last corridor out of the night. Rel stood over Simone's body and checked Raphael one more time. Both were gone. Damon Hayes had vanished into the dark like the political animal he was, leaving the structure to burn without him. Isaiah's voice finally returned to the earpiece, rough and strained. East side clear, one down. I'm hit but mobile. Police are 2 minutes out. Ghost looked at Rel. We can't be here when they come through the door. Rel nodded once. He understood the math. Langford alive and talking was worth more than any final bullet. The federal machine would do the rest if they fed it properly. Ghost leaned down until Langford had no choice but to meet his eyes. Brooks will be here soon. You're going to give him every name, every account, every transfer. If you omit a single one, the next visit won't come with questions. Langford's breathing was shallow. You still believe the system will protect you after this? Ghost stood. I stopped believing in protection a long time ago. I only believe in consequences. They left through the same side entrance they had used to enter. Isaiah met them at the tree line, blood running down his left arm, face set in the same hard calm he had worn in the Philadelphia funeral home. The three of them moved through the dark yards and narrow alleys until the sirens and the blue lights belonged to a different block. By the time the first uniforms breached Langford's front door, Ghost, Rel, and Isaiah were already in a stolen sedan crossing into Maryland, the city shrinking behind them like a bad dream that had finally run out of chapters. Detective Isaiah Brooks found Richard Langford alive and bleeding in the second-floor office, surrounded by the bodies of Simone Tate and Raphael Cruz. The folder on the desk contained enough shell company records and political transfer lists to keep 3 U.S. attorneys busy for years. Maria Alvarez stood beside Brooks as the paramedics worked on Langford. She watched the man's eyes track every face in the room with the same cold intelligence that had nearly rewritten 3 cities. Brooks spoke quietly. He'll talk. Men like him always talk when the blood is theirs. Maria's phone vibrated one final time. She looked at the screen, then locked it without answering. The source had gone permanently silent. Some debts, she decided, were better left unpaid. Brooks glanced at her. You ever going to tell me who it was? Maria stared at the blood on the rug. It doesn't matter anymore. The board is broken. For the first time in 6 years, Brooks allowed himself to believe that might be true. 3 weeks later, Harlem woke the same way it always had. Miss Pearl unlocked the soul food restaurant before sunrise and started the coffee. Ava Monroe sat in the same booth where Ghost had once measured her loyalty and found only love. She looked thinner, harder around the eyes, but she was still there. Ghost entered through the side door just as the first light touched 135th Street. He moved slower than before. The nights in Maryland and the quiet meetings with federal lawyers had taken something from him that sleep could not return. Ava watched him sit. You look like a man who finally got tired. I am tired. But you're still here. Ghost looked through the window at the street that had raised him. The circle is done. The name, the structure, all of it. What's left is just people trying to stay free. Ava reached across the table and covered his hand. And Rel. Ghost's jaw tightened for a moment, then loosened. Rel went south. Said he needed air that didn't smell like New York. We didn't end clean. But we didn't end with a bullet either. That's more than most brothers get. Miss Pearl set 2 plates down without being asked. Y'all going to eat or keep talking like the dead are listening? Ghost almost smiled. It was the closest thing to peace he had felt in months. Outside, a black sedan rolled past the restaurant and kept going. No message, no signal. Just another car in a city that never really slept. Ghost watched it disappear. Somewhere in Atlanta, Streetlit was already rebuilding the parts of renegade music that could still stand the light. Pretty C's new record had gone out the week before. The same song she had played in that Calorama living room, now streaming under a different kind of attention. OG Ball had learned to keep his mouth shut long enough to stay alive. Isaiah Graves had returned to North Philadelphia with a new understanding of what quiet power looked like. The two cities no longer pointed guns at each other across state lines. That was enough. Damon Hayes had not been seen in public since the night in Calorama. Some said he left the country. Some said the structure he served had simply closed its mouth around him. Ghost did not care which version was true. Richard Langford sat in a federal facility, still talking, still trying to trade names for years. The machine was larger than one man. Ghost had always known that. But machines could be forced to choke on the truth if you fed them enough of it at once. On a cool evening in late autumn, Ghost stood alone on the same Harlem rooftop where the first anonymous message had arrived what felt like a lifetime ago. The city glowed the same way it always had. Sirens still bounced between the buildings. Somewhere a saxophone still found a window to cry through. He took out the old phone he no longer used for business and looked at the blank screen. No messages, no warnings, no one left to tell him that the enemy was already inside. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and leaned on the low wall, watching the shifts change below him the way they always had. Harlem never really slept. It only changed shifts. And for the first time in years, Malik Ghost King allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the next shift could belong to something quieter than a crown. He stayed on the rooftop until the sun began to rise, then went downstairs to the life that was still left to build. The circle was gone. The war was over. The king was still breathing. That would have to be enough.
My mom said it would be days like this. I ain't know we'd ever get paid like this. I ain't know the feds hit the play with a bliss. Now my girl looking out the window with a stick. Every car slow down, she suspicious as shit. Every phone call got me switching the script. Used to pray for the money, now money bring problems. Funny how the same paper don't help you solve them. I done watched day ones turn strangers for dollars. Watch the broke man gain power and forget who beside her. Had to learn every smile they love when they smiling. Some people only come around when the diamonds be shining. So I keep my circle tight like the links on the chain. We survived too much shit just to switch for the fame. If I call you my brother, that shit deeper than names. You was there when the refrigerator was empty for days.
Welcome to the circle. Once you in and way out. If they not talking about us, what they talking about? The big dreams, I'm on your team. But you can't trust nobody, and it ain't never what it seems. Welcome to the circle. Who can you trust when the pressure get applied? Everybody solid till they freedom on the line. Everybody came to that courtroom, go close, and the prosecutor upward on the road back home.
I seen loyalty fall for a couple last years, so I learned how to tell everybody my fear. Keep the business on business, keep the family near, cause the ones know your weakness make the danger severe. I was broke, I remember what that hunger do. Make it ride through the storm when the thunder come through. Now it's marble on the love and a redneck roof, but I still see the trenches when I look at the view. We wanted money, never knew it came with the wealth. More eyes, more lies, more protecting yourself. Went from bro, I got you to everybody for herself. That's why the circle got small when the bank account swell. Everybody can't come when we going. Everybody ain't built for the moment. Everybody at the table ain't chosen. Sometimes the closest one and you be the one that for it. So if you make it through that door, better